fun challenges. Okay, so I think we've got a quorum. Who are we missing? Maria? And, well, let's do the roll. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Tucker, I think we can go ahead and start recording. I've got 7 o'clock.
You are recording.
Thank you very much, and welcome, Tucker. Appreciate your help, leadership, and support going forward. Thank you. Okay, Judy, if you could do the roll call, and we'll see any alternates as needed. Judy, you there? That's the phrase of the 2020.
Judy, you have to unmute yourself.
I'll do it again.
There we go.
All right. Robert Spangler, we don't have Neil Button.
Yeah, I'm right here.
We're good.
Hey,
All
Bob.
right, great. Neil Butnick, Judy Neville, Tom Schulte,
Here.
Amy Carroll,
Here.
George Blauvelt,
Here.
Todd Lavieri,
Here.
Bree,
Here.
Michael Chen,
Here.
Maria Weingarten. She's not there, I guess, huh? All right, so I'm forgetting somebody. Who did I miss?
Bob Hamill.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, that's who I'm missing. Yeah. He's here?
No, he's not able to make it tonight.
Here, okay. So we just, well, Maria's, no, we're fully seated then. And Kevin Monahan, our first selectman, is he here? No, maybe he will be. All right.
I'm here.
No, Kevin's here. Kevin's
Oh.
there.
Well, we're fully seated then.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, a motion to approve the minutes from September 8th.
So moved.
Tom, thank you. Second?
A second.
Second, Amy. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Okay. Thank you. Okay, just a couple of housekeeping items. And first is are Dr. Lutzy and Dr. Keating on?
Yep.
Yes, they are.
Good to see you.
Great. Okay, thanks. Yeah, good evening. Thank you. Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got a full agenda. I do want to make a couple of comments, though, just a couple of opening comments. First of all, this is Tom Stadler's last meeting. Tom is retiring, I think, as everyone knows. And I'd like to thank Tom on behalf of the Board of Finance, on behalf of the town, on behalf of the residents of New Canaan. I met Tom in the fall of 1995, 25 years ago. I was doing a project at Deloitte. Tom was a partner, and he was a welcoming, gracious, thoughtful, helpful guy, great counselor. He was always a good sounding board, and as both a partner and then obviously in his role here, very thoughtful, great judgment. And the term we used to have at Deloitte for these kinds of rare human beings was he was a partner's partner, and I absolutely think that was the right description of Tom. He was always, you know, when you talk about Batman and Robin, he's not Robin, he's Alfred. Stuff's happening in the background and you don't know why. And you don't know how it gets done, but it just gets done. And so in any event, I wanted to thank him for his long service to New Canaan and for all the help that he's given us on this board and certainly others. So a big thank you and shout out to Tom Stadler.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's been a great run. And I used to always say it was those elves in the woods that were doing all the work. It wasn't me. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
I just wanted to say one thing, Todd.
Yes, please. If anyone had any comments they'd like to add, thank you.
He is the Tom Hanks of New Canaan government.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tom Stadler has always been, in every environment I've ever worked with him on, the consummate professional and gentleman. And I really appreciate all the help he's given us.
Yeah, I like to say too, Tom, I remember you when we were on the baseball board together, right? That was many years ago when we were a little bit younger, a little bit faster, but I just want to say it's been amazing to work with you all these years. It's been over 2 decades, and congratulations on your next step, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Most gracious.
I've known him for at least that long, and he had more hair and it's white and he still looks great. We love you, Tom.
And he had a collared shirt on.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. You can tell it's your last meeting, right?
Yeah, right. Casual Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, I just want to weigh in. You have been so helpful and you have patience I cannot imagine. I mean, it's just amazing and always calm and cool, no matter what very difficult and unfair things get thrown your way. So thanks so much.
Thank you. It's a good thing we're recording this. I can play it back over and over and over again.
And Tom, don't you want to thank Jan for all her support all these
Oh,
years?
yes, I just called her into the room, but I think she's ignoring me. No, I don't think she heard me. But yes, we should thank Jan for allowing me to stay out 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night.
I know.
Exactly.
I was going to add up all the words and all the minutes and all the agendas and see how many we came up with, but it's impossible.
Well, thank you.
15 years, it pretty much adds up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, thanks for everything you've done. It certainly helped me when I first got on here to learn the ropes, and you've been a great resource on all the problems we've had to deal with. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we should do a round of applause. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
Thank
Okay.
you all.
Okay, so thanks for that. Second of all, I wanted to mention that Bob Spangler has notified us that he is going to be stepping down and not continuing. Bob's last meeting, I would believe, will be in November, not tonight. So we're not doing our thank yous to Bob, which will go on forever, given all that he did and everything he's done for this town and for this board. But I did want to make sure everybody was aware of that. It'll be an enormous loss to this board. But we'll talk about that next.
Yeah, I've been here longer than Tom, so feels like it's time. But yeah, well, I guess I step down officially whenever I'm replaced, so I will be here through November.
Oh, I forgot that. We can control that, I think. Now that
Yeah,
I'm glad you
actually,
mentioned that. That's a codicil I forgot about.
Can we do it through the budget process? So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one more budget round.
Yeah, Bob, May looks good.
I
Bob.
retract
That's great.
I
this'll
retract
be
that
May.
comment.
It's premature. It's a May announcement. I just
Yeah.
want to get
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Anyway,
You don't want-
go ahead, Bob.
No, I said you don't want me to do the budget under under those conditions.
Okay. And then the only thing, just one other quick thing. Can everybody please mute if you're not speaking? We're getting a little squeaking and feedback that's going on. And my last announcement, it is our first selectman's birthday, and we're not going to sing happy birthday, but I'm so glad you decided to spend your birthday with us tonight, Kevin. So thank you. And I appreciate that. But anyway, happy birthday. Hope you have a great day and a great week and a great year.
Thank you.
And with that, I will turn it over to you, and please provide us your update. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Todd. My 7th Zoom meeting of the day. And so I'll just give you a few comments. One, COVID is obviously very much on our minds. We continue to get a few cases a week, minus the college kids who we subtract out for purposes of the school's metrics. College kids stay away for the most part at their colleges. And we still see unrelated cases, nothing systemic, nothing we perceive as happening in the schools, which is a good thing. But we are very concerned with everything that's happening around us, not only in the country, but other parts of Connecticut. So the prospect of a second wave is very much on our minds, and we're beginning to prepare for that with the EOC. We just haven't seen it yet in our numbers. And given all the activity that goes on in town now with phase 3 reopenings, there's an awful lot of commerce going on and a lot of people traveling into New Canaan, but our numbers are still remarkably low. And we hope that for some reason it'll stay that way. So we had an advisory committee meeting this morning of our Buildings and Infrastructure Committee. And we talked about the status of our CHP projects, both at the wastewater treatment plant, which is on schedule to be installed with gas and then operating hopefully by February. The SACS project is moving forward. And solar, we're trying to finalize some agreements with respect to the addition of solar to 3 town buildings and East School's just about finished, but the Saks roof is just about done, and we're looking to try to get Saks and West scheduled. In the high school, we have Xerox's pending, so that is all hopefully moving forward. We look to stand up a building committee for the police department. I hope by next Tuesday we can make an appointment of a building committee and get that moving forward, whether it's a renovation or a new building. But I'm not going to call it the renovation committee yet because we still haven't exhausted the possibility of a new building. And the library, as you know, is not on tonight's agenda. We're continuing to talk to the library about the parking situation, and it looks like underground parking is way too expensive. So we're in discussions about whether the center school lot needs to be expanded or not. And as a solution to their parking issue, planning and zoning will decide how many spaces they need, and they really haven't, the town planner hasn't yet landed on a number, but they continue to work with the traffic and parking engineers to, I guess they're not engineers, consultants on that. But that should be coming to you next month if the library can finalize their building costs. And then Waveney House, we talked about this morning at the advisory committee meeting, and we'd like to plan to proceed with what we're going to turn it around and do phase 3 first, which is the all the first floor accessibility. If you want to, Todd, spend some time on getting up on this, Tiger's prepared to give you an update. But we really feel that the first funding was provided, and we really need to, advance the ADA accessibility issues, starting with the first floor. And we've been working on whether there's an alternative to the elevator. We can give you more detail on that.
Okay.
And then finally, Aquarian announced today that starting tomorrow, there's going to be a drought-triggered irrigation ban in New Canaan, Darien, Greenwich, and several surrounding towns. And we will begin to message that tomorrow because they are getting very concerned about the levels that the reservoirs are getting, despite the rain, that they have triggered their drought conditions. So that is my update.
Okay, thank you. Okay, unless there are any questions, with that, let's go on to the Water Pollution Control Authority item. Is Maria covering this?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes, hi. Good evening. The owner of 25 Conrad Road has requested permission from the Water Pollution Control Authority to enter the sanitary sewer service area and connect to the existing town sewer system in Conrad Road. Given that the subject property has documented failing septic, the support of the health department, an inland wetlands permit for the work, and no concerns with remaining town departments, the extension to the sewer is prudent. The applicant has submitted all required documentation in conformance with the town's procedures to connect to the sanitary sewer. The sewer collection system and treatment plant has current capacity to accept the additional flows from the connection. The plans and documentation submitted for the connection have been reviewed by and are acceptable to this department. Therefore, it is recommended that the connection of 25 Conrad Road to the sanitary sewer and the property's inclusion in the sewer service district be approved. Public Works will require that before beginning any work, the applicant shall obtain a road opening permit and a sewer connection permit from this office. With me tonight is the owner's engineer, Leonard DeAndrea, who prepared the required documentation, should you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Any questions to the board? Any concerns, any thoughts? Yep, Amy, are you on mute, Amy?
Yep. How much capacity do we have in our system? I mean,
So currently we do have adequate capacity. There is definitely capacity for this additional property. I can't give you the actual number, but we are at adequate capacity. And I have Tiger Man also on the line too, if there's anything more specific to that.
I mean, all things being equal, I'm assuming it's a very positive thing for people to hook up to the sanitary sewer system, just doing a septic, right? I mean, that's something that would be a positive environmentally.
Well, for this case, it's because they already have a documented failing septic system. In normal circumstances, the septic system is a very valid and good functioning system, and is not a cause of concern for the environment. But in an instance like this, where there are wetlands on the property and there are poor soils,
Right.
that has led to a failing septic. So therefore, yes, it is environmentally a benefit to connect to the sewer system.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If there are none, motion to approve.
So move.
Bob, second.
Second.
George, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, none? None? Okay, thank you. So moved. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, next on the agenda, Board of Ed update on the special appropriation request for materials related to COVID-19. I think I'm turning it over to who? To Dr. Lutzy or to Katrina or to Brian?
Hi, Todd, it's Katrina. I just had a couple of opening comments and I'll turn it right over to Brian. Dr.
Okay, well, let me just say, first of all, thank you, not only you and your entire board, but Dr. Keating and Dr. Lutzy for everything you've done to pull together and get the schools up and running. Oh my goodness, I hear about it from other districts. I don't have a student in the student system anymore, so I don't have real time, but I have a lot of anecdotal evidence or information, I should say, and thanks for really pulling all this together, the one-time expense information, doing all that you're trying to do, I think 24/7 to try to keep the wheels on. So well done, and thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate that. And thanks to all of the Board of Finance members for your ongoing partnership with the Board of Education as we continue to navigate through this pandemic. As Todd acknowledged, it's a challenge, and I wanted to take a brief moment to acknowledge Dr. Lutzy and the members of the cabinet, as well as our school principals, our union leaders, teachers, staff, for their truly incredible and tireless efforts.
That way we're listening to the same part.
Okay. So their flexibility, teamwork, and unwavering dedication to our schools since March are truly the reason we've been able to proactively prepare and respond to COVID, and the reason we will be fully open K-12 next week. So the thoughtfully developed district COVID operations plan continues to serve as a foundation and a guide for handling whatever may come our way. So thanks to your support of the non-lapsing account early this summer, we were able to move quickly to secure the required PPE, cleaning supplies, and technology to support a hybrid reentry model and a full K-12 opening less than 7 weeks later. And New Canaan is one of the very few districts across our state in this positive situation, and that's a direct result of the strategic planning and the early procurement of these resources. So as I believe you all expected, we are back tonight to request a budget appropriation to cover additional expenditures directly related to preparing our schools to operate during this pandemic. So while we momentarily pause to celebrate an almost full reopening of our schools, we know that much uncertainty remains in the months ahead. And our experience to date demonstrates the district's sound and thoughtful plans can successfully support our students in any learning modality, whether it's in-person, hybrid, or remote learning. So our goal remains to keep our schools open to all students for as much of this year as possible if health metrics support that. Keeping our schools open is resource intensive and costly, but it is the right thing to do, and it is what our children deserve and need during these times. So we do ask and we hope for your support this evening in doing so, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Lutzy to provide additional details. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katrina. Before I do, on behalf of the Board of Ed and all of us in the district, I want to say also thank you to Tom Sadler. Tom's been a great friend for us in Town Hall. He's been a wonderful liaison for us and all that we're doing. And Tom, we're going to miss you. So thank you for helping us all out whenever we need it, and always being there for us.
Thank you.
All right, couldn't resist. But the thanks to the entire Board of Finance. Bob, I'm not even going to begin to think about what budget's going to be like without you this year. So I'm going to put that aside, and we'll say that goodbye later. But I do want to say thanks to the whole Board of Finance for first back in March as we came and worked through the spring, as Katrina mentioned, and put in place the non-lapsing account for your trust in us, as we had to make some bold and swift decisions and moves in order to get the resources in place to provide the quality of education for our students and community that they expect us to. It's really been a very good and positive, strong partnership, and we're grateful for that trust and that work together that we've done from the very start. I'm also grateful for this meeting and for this conversation because as we agreed back even in the summer and in the spring, that I believe it's important to have this conversation outside of the budget conversation. You know, there's a budget we need to run our schools, to do the things we're doing. And I think even a member of the Board of Finance said last time that they didn't want the COVID experience to become a budget process light. And I'm really grateful for that because as Katrina mentioned, we're so fortunate to have an amazing team of cabinet administrators, our principals, assistant principals, teachers, everybody across the board are working so hard, and our Board of Ed is helping to keep things moving forward. And you know, the thought of sort of doing a budget light on top of a budget heavy was daunting, because this has been a 24-hour-a-day job to keep our district open. Even on a call this morning with the Department of Public Health, they talked about how many districts may not have positive cases, you know, as they're going through. And we've experienced 7 positive cases in our schools to date, and we haven't lost a minute of instructional time with our kids. And that is truly a testament to sort of what we're going to be talking about and the incredible commitment of everybody involved. And as Kevin knows, I mean, the partnership with the EOC, the partnership with the health department, and those communications that are there nonstop. And I didn't mention our nursing staff. They're doing an amazing job keeping things open. But the $400K in the beginning helped us to make some of those decisions nimbly that permitted us to do what we needed to do to be ready to open before Labor Day. I mean, we opened our schools to kids before Labor Day, the week before. When you start thinking about how much earlier that is, many of the districts around us pushed off their start time by a full week, their start day. Because they didn't have supplies ready, because there were other issues going on. And as you remember, we had the power outages that hit in August and all of that. We persevered right through that. We'd made a commitment to our kids and our families, and we kept our start date where we wanted it to be. Again, that's in large part because of the trust the Board of Finance placed in us and our ability to get those things that we needed to get. I mean, it's things, as we'll talk about tonight, we talked about the cleaning supplies, the sanitizer, the plexiglass. I mean, everything that it takes to really get these schools ready to bring kids in every day. And, you know, we're here to talk about the finances, but I'm also happy to talk about sort of the schools themselves, because as somebody mentioned, Todd, you mentioned just before, if you don't have a child in the schools right now, it could be hard to understand and to visualize sort of what it's like, and even to know kind of what we're doing, what our status is right now, you know, in the schools. But just as a quick overview, you know, this is the 4th week that we've had our students in K through 4. So they were out for, you know, we were in a hybrid to begin. We were hybrid across the board, which was kindergarten did AM or PM sessions, and then 1st through 12th grade they came in Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, with alternating Wednesday. So what we did with a hybrid is we brought our density down to 50%. And that's where, when we're going to talk about some of the investments we had to make, the technology investments, the you know, the plexiglass and other things that we've had to source in, were all to get us ready to open with that 50% density of kids. But that's not to say that kids went to school only half the time, because when they weren't there, we had a live stream program that was working for them, where they would log in and participate, and teachers learned how to run a hybrid class. So they could have a whole class discussion with all 22 kids, where 11 of them are at home, 11 of them are in the room, and they're you know, experiencing that as one interactive class. We know the value of that, not just while we're in a hybrid, but throughout the entire year, because if students aren't feeling well, if they're symptomatic, we want them to be able to stay home, still participate, but so not fall behind, but also not feel that they have to come to school or they'll fall behind the rest of their class. So we're trying to de-incentivize them from kind of pushing through if they're not feeling well. We want them to stay home. that's part of managing the spread of the pandemic. We also know that there's the times where our students or kids, our kids or teachers are going to have to quarantine or isolate. I mean, we know that it's in the environment and we're dealing with it. As I said, we've had 7 positive cases so far. When they do have to isolate or quarantine, they can still participate in their education. We don't want kids to fall 2 weeks behind when this happens. We want our teachers to be able to keep teaching if they feel well and are healthy. That's what our system allows to happen. I'm very proud. So we're in our 4th week with K4, bringing them all back in 100%. We're in our 3rd week with our 5th grade. This is our 2nd week with our entire 6th grade. Yesterday, we brought back the 7th grade. And today, the high school was a very happy place as we brought back all of our seniors. You know, and so, you know, we're doing this as thoughtfully as we can, as we think about what makes the most sense for our kids. So we wanted to get our youngest learners in first, because we know this hybrid experience is toughest for them. We wanted to move our middle schoolers in, but phase it in, because each one of those grades is 300 plus kids. So that's a lot of kids all at once into a space. But once we got our 5th grade in and 6th, we said, you know, we're getting good at this. Let's accelerate the timeline. We know now what problems we have to solve. So we did 7th yesterday. And then we said, you know, the 8th graders are doing all right with it. Our seniors deserve some special consideration. You know, they were juniors last year. They went out in March, like all of us. They didn't have junior prom. They didn't have other opportunities to get together. We really focused, I think rightfully back then, on the class of 2020. But now I really want to make sure we focus also on the class of 2021. So we brought them back in today, and they got, for the first time since March, they were all in one place as a class. And that's powerful. You know, I think that that's really worth celebrating. Another piece to all of it is, and I think this is higher than any other district I've heard, 94% of our kids are participating in our daily program. Only 6% are doing the remote program that we still offer and do. Now that speaks to, I really believe, the confidence that they have in the work that we're doing to keep people safe in our schools. So with 94% coming in, about 6% staying out, and they, for a variety of different reasons, there may be someone who's in their household that's immunocompromised, they might have other concerns. So all legitimate reasons, but again, I think that's another really important metric for us and speaks to the success that we've been having. The expenses that we'll talk about tonight are not dissimilar from surrounding towns. I've heard some much higher numbers. I haven't heard many lower. I think this is running about where districts are having to spend in order to source in the equipment and materials needed to do this work. So there's similar expenses, I'd say. Of course, I say with a little pride that I'd say our results are superior. You know, and that has to do with the quality of our teaching staff, the partnership with our union. Vivian and Rana are amazing partners in this, and they've been lockstep with us right away. Our custodians, you know, they've gone from cleaning to sanitizing every night. All of our classrooms, all of our surfaces, all of our bathrooms, they're all sanitized every night, because we know this is both airborne and surface transmitted. So we've got to stay on top of all of that, and we are. You know, the protocols on the buses, everything else has changed. And so folks are following the protocols, doing what they have to do, and we're experiencing the success. So by the end of next week, we'll be in K-12. Pre-K-12, I should say, although we never went half day with our pre-K. They were full day all the time at WEC. But we'll be fully in the end of next week, and the phased approach has worked very well for us. There are few districts statewide that are fully in, and of some that are, you know, in the region, there's that, it's not just whether or not they're fully in, it's also what percentage of the students are on remote learning. Because you can be fully in, but if 25% of your kids are out, you're not, right? So the fact that 94% of our kids are in, when we bring in a grade, we're really bringing in just about all. Just today, we had 9 students that were on remote learning in the senior class at the high school opt to start coming in every day. So they were fully remote when we were hybrid, but now that we're all in, they want to come in and be part of that class. And again, I think that speaks to all of our partnership here and the success that we're having together. So as Katrina mentioned, there's been a lot. This is a labor of love here, and we've made some hard decisions and had to prepare not just for what's happening today, but for what we anticipate to happen in the future. We'll talk a little bit about that. You'll see we've had to make some moves with building substitutes. So we've hired in some building subs, and we'll get into the numbers. But that, for instance, allows us provides us with the continuity we need in our classrooms when teachers may have to go out and quarantine. Again, a quarantine period can be 14 days. It can be two solid weeks. And we don't want our students to lose the continuity of instruction. So a building sub allows us to put somebody into the room who has been trained on the tech, who knows how to work the hybrid system. And then the teacher can log in from home and continue teaching while that substitute who knows the kids, knows the system, helps to facilitate, in the classroom. So some of those moves were really purposeful, anticipating the need to isolate or quarantine with our staff, and then again with our students, which is why we have the system that we do have in place. I think we put a world-class system in place for a world-class educational program, and again, it's taken some hard decisions and certainly resources. And so this is, again, I think the right time for us to come and have this discussion so that we can, so again, answer any questions about the finances or the program, but the partnership has made a world of difference for us, and we're very grateful for all of that. So with that, I will ask Dr. Keating if she would take us through the overview of the expenditures, if that's all right, Todd, and then we can go from there. Now, I'm happy to share this if you'd like on the screen, or people can use the email that came around, whatever's easier for people.
I think everybody has it. It's okay to share it if you'd like, Dr. Keating. I'll leave that up to you. There are questions on the numbers and the need for some details. Obviously, this is a special appropriation. This is outside of the budget, so that everybody realizes that. So it's not like a normal budget where you have an amount of money and it's within your purview and the board to spend it. This is special, so we do need to get some information, some details. So turn it over to you.
And Dr. Keating, I did make you a co-host if you need to share.
I think Brian's going to share the document. So as we lead up to the sharing of the document, I just wanted to mention that after we had everybody, all the students and the staff situated with remote learning last spring, around the end of April, we started to conceptualize what it would look like to bring our students back. And at that point in time, we did not have guidelines from the state of Connecticut, neither the DPH or the SDE, but we had to start thinking about what the scientists were saying in terms of safety and what it would take in terms of the availability to source those items into the district on a large scale basis. So our planning started basically at the end of April, and we became very strategically focused or laser focused on the safety aspect. And then we moved into what does instructional practice look like in a full in-school situation, a hybrid, and a remote. And we had to put a plan in place that enabled us to be nimble between all three of those domains. And we had to tool ourselves to accomplish that, because we do expect to have all three of those domains within the school year. So we did not want to enter the school year not prepared to pivot and be nimble so that the students maintain their educational continuity without much disruption. So with regards to what I've laid out here for you today, just to give you, and I understand what you're saying, Todd, our budget normally comes in with much less detail than this. We're in categories. We try to give you a high level picture of where we're spending our money. We give you a lot on FTE and our non-salary accounts, the big buckets, and then we drill down to some smaller ones. Just so that you know, the Munis system as it is, the way it works, it doesn't, our purchase orders go through the Munis system with a lot of detail, but once they're converted to a purchase order, that detail stays with the order. So when we're running reports, it's not saying that you're buying, the account for PPE could have 500 items in it. And we're not getting that individual detail. 10 of these times $35 is $350. So what we've been doing since we started procuring for COVID under what we put together as a special fund we've been categorizing them so that we could report out to our board. So for PPE, technology, instruction, cleaning, transportation just came up more recently, and other, we've been reporting out consistently to our board so that they had a good sense, and we've described what these categories mean. So I'm going to provide that background for you tonight. However, if you want that level of details, I know in a normal audit year, our annual audit, the auditors do some testing in the specifics on, you know, how many protective desk shields did you buy for $98,000? And they'll do sampling on that, which certainly this account will have that level of oversight as well. But I'm going to walk you through it, and I'm going to give you a sense of what we did purchase, and then you can give us some feedback in terms of clarity that you may need. So one of the things that we looked at very soon on in this whole process is that we had to look at our classroom furniture and determine whether or not the classroom furniture facilitated distancing. And as you can well imagine, all of the students, primarily at the elementary level, are taught in tables. So they're like in these round tables, some of them have some indents and whatnot. But when they're sitting at the table, they're all looking at each other and breathing on one another. So we couldn't source desks for that level in the elementary. They just weren't available. So we had to take a look at how could we retrofit those tables and utilize what we had and be able to have our children sit, maybe not 6 at a table, but 4. And so we did 2 things. We investigated what protective shields were available in the market. And these are mobile shields that you can literally move, teachers can move, kids can move, and then permanent shields. And we started to look at the cost of acrylic or plexiglass partitions, and they were extremely expensive. And if you can well imagine, we have some 7,000 desks, chairs, tables, seating space for students in the district. And to set up much of that with these $300 and $400 units was prohibitive. So we were able to get into the market early on in May and early June and procure a bulk of acrylic sheets. And our maintenance crew actually fabricated them in our wood shop down at the high school. And it really worked out well. This 73,000 could have well been up in the 300,000 to 400,000 range. But fortunately, with the talent that we have in-house, we have a master carpenter and some other folks that have that ability to do that work and the equipment in the wood shop. We were able to retrofit all of our cafeteria tables and quite a few desks with the stationary plexiglass. The protective shields, again, are for both teachers and students. So we have 4,000 students, not all of them received, you know, we didn't retrofit every single desk with that. There's quite a few that are not. But most of our teachers did receive one so that they could be mobile and move around their classrooms and sit with children and communicate with them through this 3-way trifold shield. In addition to that, we had to really procure masks, face shields, gloves, and hand sanitizers. We have sanitation stations throughout our schools in appropriate areas, cafeteria, entrance areas, gymnasiums, and so forth. That students and staff can use and any visitor as they enter or exit the areas. So the total of that was $95,766. When we looked for these items, they were looked for both not only on price, but also on availability and on delivery time. We had a lot of ETAs that were really starting to stretch out, even though we were in the game very early. So was everybody else, and people who were proactive were out there. So we did a combination. We looked at the state bid. We're very active in the state bidding process. Many of our vendors are on the state bid, but we also looked at other sources. We had a few local sources that came to us and offered their assistance, and where it made sense, we took advantage of that. So that covers the PPE. We will have to replenish PPE as we move forward during the school year. We did not procure enough to get us through. We're probably into 2 more weeks, and we're putting a replenish order in right now. With regards to technology, I had explained to our Ed Resources Committee way back that we have that $600,000 technology lease that we get every year from the board. And in that, we had a number of replacements that we were able to procure early on. We put our orders in for our iPads and our Chromebooks back in late May, June. We have our iPads and we still have yet to see the Chromebooks, which has been a strain on our system. We actively collected every single computer that we had in the district over to Sachs Middle School because we needed to deploy a one-to-one K-8 in the district and then supply the 9-12 need students with the devices they needed. That was a monumental task that we had to complete, and we were able to accommodate every single grade, which with exception of grade 5, because of the late delivery on the Chromes. So we cobbled together some laptops, some older Chromes, some iPads, whatever we could find that would accommodate that grade. And as soon as those Chromebooks come in, we will be swapping them out for those units. So that's grade 5. The other grades have been tooled with the units that they need. So getting down to technology, one of the things that we got into once we had some guidelines in terms of what to anticipate, we realized that the amplification in the classroom for the teacher was not strong with the student at home. So and that was K-12. So we went out and we investigated the 3 options that were available to us on the market. And we actually had Spencer and one of our teammates on our team, Joe Coretti, go in and work with us at the high school for a few days. We demoed each one of them. We tried them out. We were remote. We were listening to the quality. And the price ranged from $300, roughly around $300 to $1,100 per unit. Now you can well imagine we have 400 classrooms. So we weren't looking really at the price at first, but we were listening to the quality. And fortunately, the lowest price solution was the one that we went with because it was the best solution and the most cost effective. And so that has amplified each classroom K-12 across the district. The next thing that we had to do because of the fact that we were going to have remote learning, we do anticipate pockets of hybrid learning throughout the year, is to provide access points throughout the school. We didn't have one-to-one. We had quite a few, but we did not have one-to-one throughout the schools, and we did not have exterior Wi-Fi up close to the building. And so the 121,900 provided us to have the appropriate amount of access so that students weren't falling off the network, losing internet connectivity, and that sort of thing. So it was seamless for our students. We did have a few hiccups at first, but it's been running fairly smoothly the last several weeks. Digital learning software, as you can well imagine, we do have digital learning software. We've had it at the high school and we've had a good amount at the middle school. We had to push a lot of it out to the lower level and some to Sachs to really facilitate the remote and hybrid learning. So that's 108,000, and also to be able to Zoom with our students. Last year we were fortunate. Zoom was free, and this year it's costly. So that's part of that. We had to purchase carrying cases for our students to bring their devices to and from the house for a home, and then power strips. The Chromebooks and the ProBooks are a very small amount that we needed to balance out. We didn't have enough money at the end with the lease, and we needed to purchase some Chromebooks and ProBooks to finalize our deployment for teachers and for our students, and that's roughly 65 units, I believe. Document cameras were another big piece. In order to visually have that piece with families at home and the students at home, we had to have a decent cameras. And so we purchased DocuCams. The interesting part about that is we went out to the market in July. We couldn't find DocuCams anywhere. So we purchased a lower level camera. It was a little bit more expensive, but we purchased a lower 2-pixel camera, and we brought them in, and we told the vendor that if we can source in the DocuCams, we're going to hold these and send them back to you. And that's exactly what we did. We were going out to the market looking at what was available on a daily basis, and we came across DocuCams and we snatched them up and we sent the old ones back. We have students outside more so than we have before. We want to make sure all our teachers are equipped with portable radios should there be a safety issue that arises. Headphones, earbuds, we've had to purchase more than we had based on the K4 push out of the one-to-one. And then we've had a whole host of garden variety of miscellaneous supplies for technology.
Just a quick comment. I would suggest you just keep going through the other 3 or 4 categories, and then we'll have the board ask questions rather than do it a section at a time. So we do it that way, okay?
Okay, great. So instructional. So the instructional piece has been challenging. We've gone from our students sharing all of their supplies for the most part, everything from crayons to technology and beyond. So really thinking this through has been a challenge. And then the whole dynamic of potentially losing staff and not having staff that's trained in our technology was another area that had to be thought out very carefully. So Brian, if you'd like to jump in on the substitutes, I can run through the rest of this category if you're good with that.
Sure, glad to. So we knew that we're going to have more teacher absences than normal, given the fact, of course, of the needs for quarantines and isolation, and where we are, both teachers, their staff that may have to quarantine because of close contact in the school or out of the school. So we wanted to bring in people who knew the kids, knew the routines and the system. So we have our building substitutes. Each elementary school has a 1.0 for general education, and there's 2.0 at Saks and 3.0 at the high school. We also have special education needs to bring in some substitutes for special ed so that we can run our PPTs throughout the days, because we have catch up to do. When we closed in March, we went a period of time without holding PPTs at the urging of the state and others. So we had to bring in some certified special ed teachers to be able to do that work. Now these folks are on 1-year contracts. So they'll be with us from now till June 30th. But they do know they're hired as building substitutes, and we're using them as generalists, where we need to use them. So if the first absence in every building, that's the first name that gets called. And then if there's more, then we go through our sub list. Because the other piece that it's helping us to solve is schools throughout the state have had to close for a day or longer because they're not able to get substitutes. The pool of subs is really dried up. People generally will often go into become substitutes if they're retired from something else and they're looking for something to do and they want to get back and they want to interact with kids. And those people are often in the high risk category and they're not coming. So we've lost a whole pool of subs. And so we still have some, but it's much shallower than it was. Having the building subs there means at least right out in the beginning, we've got a couple of folks who can step in, and they're busy every day. When we had a teacher quarantine at one of our elementaries, it was the building sub who went in, helped get everything running. The teacher taught from home. The building sub facilitated with kids, worked with kids, and they didn't miss a step in their education. And that's the system we've designed. That's how we've designed it to work for our community. So again, glad to answer more questions afterwards about that.
Okay. So at the elementary levels, our students do not have lockers for the most part to put their, except at West, they have some, but for the most part, they don't have a space to put their supplies and their personal items in. So we had to think of a way to give them their own separate space to keep these items in. But at the same time, they had to be mobile in order to come out of the room in the evening for cleaning. So we had to invest K4 in mobile cubbies and totes. And so those are all, and they had to be compliant with the fire code, of course, which meant that they had to be in a steel frame. So that came to $93,000, which was a big line item. We really looked at all of our options there, and we really were really focused in on keeping it into a metal frame so we could pull them out in the halls. But they have serviced our purpose, and they are keeping all of the children's personal items and individualized instructional items together in a large cubby. The individualized student supplies, art, music, classroom are there for you. As you can well imagine, at the elementary school, the kids get together on carpets for reading and for some group instruction. And we had to take the carpets out of the rooms. So we have some trailers and different spaces filled with rolled up carpets that we hope to deploy back into the classrooms next year. But for the meantime, we wanted the children to still have a similar experience. So we brought them, you probably have had them for your children, large foam puzzle pieces that stick together. And we ordered those from Home Depot. And so each student at the elementary level has a foam pad that they sit on that we can clean. And then these cube chairs that are very mobile that can be turned over as a stand-up desk or as a seat, and they carry them around the classrooms. So that was that space. Outdoor learning spaces for tents, we have them at all the schools. The high school has more than any, and then Saks and at a lesser degree at the elementary school level. And that's where the Wi-Fi is hitting those areas on the exterior of the buildings. Social distancing signage, as you can well imagine, all the buildings are, we had to lay out every single building with social distancing signing, and also just wall signs in the bathrooms. We had to direct the students as to which spaces they could use and how many could be in the bathrooms at any given time. In the cafeterias, the serveries, the same thing. We had to install a lot of signage and that sort of thing. And then the teacher presentation stations, we're pushing in art and music and world language, I believe in some cases, into the classrooms. And so they have to have their materials on a cart. And so we purchased carts for those folks. Moving down to cleaning, this was really has been driven all along by the DPH and the guidance that has come out of the governor's office. But there's a certain amount of cleaning that needs to take place with disinfecting during the school day, which needs staffing to do that. For the most part at the elementary schools, we have 2 daytime custodians and 2 nighttime custodians. The nighttime custodians start at 2:30, and we could not do the disinfecting during the day. So at the elementary schools, what we did was we extended the second shift hours by an hour, and the days. Everybody's been extended by 1 hour per day. And we've moved their hours up. So they start at either 11 or 11:30, so they're there to clean in between each lunch wave. And then they take on their areas. And the day custodians are coming in an hour earlier, and they are doing certain areas for cleaning that they didn't do before. Throughout the day, we have to disinfect and wipe down a lot of touch areas like hand railings on the staircases, any kind of hand touch areas along the hallways. So there's a lot of disinfecting that takes place in the bathrooms as well. The bathrooms are disinfected. Once we got down towards the end of the summer, we realized we needed some help from a contractor to finalize installation of plexiglass tents, ventilation. We brought fans for a lot of the classrooms that needed to be installed with pieces of plexiglass. So we went to a local contractor that we've used in the past, and they helped us out with several people over the last several weeks of the summer to help us do the installation. And we're so grateful for them. It was a game changer for us. And I also would like to mention that our drivers did not work during the summer, the ones that drive the white vans, and we deployed them out to the schools to help with similar tasks. They did a lot of deep cleaning, cleaning that hadn't been done in probably a long time. And they also did a lot with different projects like sparsing out or spreading out all the PPE to the schools and stocking them and delivering them to the classroom. So they were so valuable in this whole process as well. Cleaning and disinfecting, we've always cleaned the schools, but not disinfected them on a regular basis. So that's additional supplies. The wipes are going to cost us a lot of money throughout the year. We've already spent $22,000 for the first 6 weeks of school. They are necessary to wipe down surfaces in between lunch periods, wipe down all of the railings and all of those things that I've just described for you. And then the ventilation and this is primarily off fans. So at the elementary schools, we have anywhere where there's a univent, not central air, but a univent, a classroom, which is all the elementaries and most of Saks, we purchased fans for, and our staff actually installed those with the help of our local contractor. One of the things that was decided early on in this whole process before school started was to put kindergarten on a half-day schedule with an X and Y cohort. And that added a layer of transportation at midday. And that cost $22,851. If we go back to that later on in the school year, that will come back, that expense will come back as well. And then just for other, the biggest expense here is storage containers. We pulled out so much stuff out of the classrooms that we had to pull out because of cleaning. I mean, teachers accumulate stuff like, it's like somebody who's lived in a house for 25 years and they just collect and collect and collect. And so we had to put containers at all the schools. You'll see them if you go by, and they're really packed with stuff to give us enough space in the classroom, not only to clean, but to spread the kids out. And that was the biggest piece of it. We had to be able to spread the kids out. Fencing on our new road. We're so grateful to Tiger and the town for putting that road in. It's been really a game changer, I would say, in terms of the traffic flow there. It's helped so much. We paid for the fencing to go across so that during the school day, the kids would not go down there. One of our elementary schools, so one of the things with DPH is they prohibited us from using our water fountains in the school. So most of our schools, thanks to the PTCs, have replaced those or supplemented those with bottle fillers. We had one elementary school that doesn't have them. The PTC has purchased them and we will be installing them, but we had to purchase bottled water for that school. And then we just have miscellaneous stuff, primarily equipment rental, but mailings and postage and that sort of thing. So this total really represents funds that are committed, that we've committed in terms of the payment to our staff. One thing I didn't mention on the cleaning is that we did hire for Saks an additional custodian with a contract through June 30th, 2021, and the same for the high school. And that $300,000 there encompasses those two positions, the overtime I spoke about, and 2 floaters that are go around the school district to fill in for people that are absent for the day. And with the cleaning requirements that we have, we felt that we would start with that and monitor it to see if it's satisfying our needs. And it may not. So we may either need to incur more overtime or look for additional staffing because the cleaning just has to take place. We can't jeopardize what we're doing. It seems to be working very well right now. So I know that's long-winded.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you some context with the numbers.
A great, good summary and appreciate it. Look, the district really needs and requests and frankly expects that we're prepared, right? That we are proactive. And I think a lot of these categories of spend are all around being prepared and being proactive, but also to be a leader in school quality and safety. And you can see that in a lot of these details as well. So appreciate that. I have 2 questions and then I'd like to just open it up for the board. My first question is on the 1.9 million, is that, we approved $400,000 back, I think now, Tom can correct me, June or July meeting. And I think you said in August or September, that you spent 600. Is the 600 part of the 1.9 or is the 600 in addition to the 1.9?
Yeah, the 600 is part of the 1.9.
Okay.
This is the gross expenditures from July 1st on.
Perfect.
And so the 400 would be net off of this.
Okay, and then, okay. And then the second question is on these contracts that were signed, one for the substitutes for the 472 and one for the custodial at 308. What if we have to force to close the school, God forbid, in September, in January and February or some period of time? Are those contracts still, are they void? Do we still have to incur that expense even if we're not closed and we can't use them? Does that work?
Well, I think regardless of the status, we're going to be using them. But they are, when I say under contract, they're hired into the teacher's contract, right? So we've hired them for this fiscal year. And so we would continue to use them and have those folks doing work for us. If we close, that's because of the level of spread has increased, the pandemic has worsened, and there's, I think, a fair expectation that we would, again, have some teachers and others who are struggling to do their work remotely. If we're fully remote, you may be aware FMLA has changed a bit, where if folks have a hard time or can't find appropriate childcare due to COVID-related closures, they're entitled to 12 weeks of FMLA. So those kinds of situations can hit districts very hard. And having these building subs helps to protect us against that as well.
I think we could understand the substitute teacher point, and fair enough. On the custodial, though, why would we need them if the schools were closed?
Well, you know, so it was a dilemma, to be honest with you, because we could not find, it was difficult to find people to make a commitment to the district as a substitute, which would be an on-call substitute. People need, you know, the security of a position. So we did talk about this when we went to hire them in terms of, you know, what's the minimum number of people that we can call out to, that we can hire for this current school year through June 30th. And we did need to make a commitment to these folks. So they will be on our payroll. We'll find work for them to do if we're on a shutdown. But in order to get the people that we needed to work for us, we did need to make that commitment. And it's not the 308. Their salaries are, it's 200 approximate of this 308, probably a little bit less. The rest of it is for overtime and extra hours that have been worked by the regular staff.
Okay.
And the overtime is an important part, Todd, for what it's worth, because the, you know, we are essentially expanding the shift an extra hour for every one of the employees, which helps us to not have to bring on more FTEs. You know, because again, the getting these buildings cleaned is, well, it's how we keep them open. So the union agreed to enter an MOU with us to work that extra hour in that way, which, you know, again, helps us to not have to bring in more bodies as well.
Okay, and my last clarifying question, then I'll turn it over to the rest of the board members. Back to the 400 that was approved. Are you saying the 19, just want to make sure I understand, we've already approved the 400. Are you saying it's 15 plus the 400 to 19? So we're actually only approving 15 tonight? If the board agrees?
That's correct. Yep,
I
that's
got you.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
The rest of the board. Right.
And Todd?
Is that Bob? Yep.
Yeah, if I can ask a couple questions. So
Yes.
because, you know, this might be my last chance to do this. So from the substitute teachers and the custodians, is that the annualized amount that we're now approving, or is that the amount from July 1 to September 30th?
It's annualized.
Right. So, and everything else is a sort of out-of-pocket expenditure, but for the instructors, if you will, and the custodials. So the substitute teachers and the custodial costs are what will be a budgetary item for the full fiscal year 2021, and then everything else is actually out-of-pocket expenditures to date. Well, through that time period.
Pending payment, yeah.
Yeah, and so that makes sense. But on PPE and the wipes for sure. I mean, you know, it's already October, so you're already into greater expenditure, I'm guessing, right? So does this, you're gonna have to come back, I guess is what I'm telling you, right? So how do you think that's gonna work? And I don't mean this any other way than just sort of logistics. You know, should we look out and buy that stuff or wait till you spend it and then have you come back? I suspect the latter is what people would prefer, but just we should talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, if you look at the box on the bottom of the worksheet, these are the things that we're concerned about, that we've been thinking about. So we know we're going to have to replenish PPE, some instructional supplies, and some, you know, definitely cleaning supplies. So increased cost of heating. Over the last several years, at least during my period of time here, we've cut back consumption by 15 to 20%, depending on the building. And at South, it's significantly more than that. And when you take a look at the fact that we have to now vent these rooms significantly, like fans during the winter, we're going to be sucking heat right out of the buildings. The teachers aren't going to like, and the kids aren't either, but we have to keep a certain turnover of the air in each classroom. And those are the rooms with the univents, rather than the central air. The high school has an air handling system that can handle all of this without any modification. Portions of SACs, especially the new portion, can handle it. But anywhere we have just exchange of air from a univent, there's no exhaust. You know, it's not exhausting out. So we have to have some source. And it may just mean cracking a window open as we move along. We're going to be monitoring this closely, but we do expect our heating bills to go up.
And electric, right? I mean, if
And
you're having fans
electric, yeah.
running.
Yeah, we have electric. And then just potential increase in the cost for substitutes. We don't know what lies ahead. We're praying that people don't get sick. Our teachers have been, knock on wood, really so dedicated so far this year, but we don't know what's going to happen. And then transportation and, you know, the unknown. At this time last year, we could never expect ourselves to be going through this. So we just don't know what's ahead of us. We're up for the challenge, but we don't know what it's going to cost.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Bob, did you have another question?
No, I'm sure my other question somebody else will pick up. I'll let somebody else go.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, and I know it's early in this, but Brian, you've talked a lot with the people at the state and, you know, with the CARES money that the state got. Is there any sense of any relief that may be coming to school districts from the state, you know, from the federal money from the initial CARES Act?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Joanne, you're a little deeper than this than I am. You want to share?
Yeah. There are two sources that come directly to education, the EAFs and the CRF or CFR money that comes in, and those are both part of CARES. And right now it looks like we're close to 250,000. We've applied for it. We haven't received it yet. So in our mind, if we do get that money, we may be able to offset some of this in terms of the, you know, what we anticipate but don't know right now. But it should be, but of that 250, we have to give the non-publics 25 to 30 of that. So they get a percentage. And that would be St. Luke's.
Are you asking, Amy, if this money is reimbursed, is expected to be reimbursed, this 1.5?
No, I was just wondering how much money they might get to help offset the costs in the future, realizing they don't have it yet. I'm just, you know, thinking down the road if, you know, we might get some relief, just like we get FEMA money after the fact. That's all I was asking.
Yeah, and we are working with Bill Osman. He's taken the lead on this with the FEMA, but we've been providing him with money. With information so he can request the funding from FEMA. And he's gone through the end of June, so perhaps that money will come in, you know, down the road. They ask a lot of questions and there's delays, but I'm sure some portion of this would be reimbursed into the general fund.
Thank you.
I saw an article on it just in the CT Post, and it said that I guess they had New Canaan down for getting 166,000, which is 17% of the 989 at that point that you had requested. So I'm not too optimistic about, you know, how much is going to come back from the state, given our ECS percentages and everything.
Yeah,
that 166 is for one of those grants I mentioned. The other one is around 90. Yeah.
Okay, who else? Next person for a question? Judy? You're on mute, Judy. Judy, you're on mute.
Now?
That's good.
Okay. Brian, just a couple of questions. What is our total enrollment to date? Up or down, increase or decrease?
We're up.
How many?
We're up. You know, with that, we're pulling those numbers together to lock them in, but I think we're up maybe 15, 20 kids. It seems to be concentrated more at Saks than anywhere. We're up in kindergarten a little, but in first grade dropped below projections a bit. So.
Yeah, I read that. How many families have transitioned to homeschooling?
So it's about 6% of our kids. So about 6% of the 4,200 that have done it. But, oh, you mean to homeschooling? I thought you meant remote. Very few have gone to homeschooling. You mean pulled out of the system entirely. Yeah, very few. Over the summer, there was those articles about learning pods.
Yeah,
that doesn't seem to have materialized in the way they were predicting here in New Canaan.
Okay, how many teachers, either under FMLA or have taken a leave of absence, which I believe they qualify for in their contract this year? How many do we have that have taken advantage of one?
Yeah, so in the contract, there is a leave provision, but we need to be notified in the spring, right? So the way this is played out, that leave provision isn't available in the same way, but the FMLA and the change in that has created an opportunity through that, because the FMLA Plus essentially says that if any staff can't find suitable childcare because of a closure due to COVID, and the definition of suitable is determined by the employee, not by the district, right? So we worked with the Y and really had a great partnership there, created a program for people at low cost, thanks to the Community Foundation, and is helping with that. I mean, there's a great story right there. But if that wasn't deemed suitable by our staff, then they're still able to take a 12-week leave. And that doesn't have to be concurrent. So it can be 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Some districts have run into real problems with this. We fortunately haven't. So for us, it's really just a handful. More common for us were some folks who were planning to come back and keep teaching for a couple of years, who made the decision not to, either for health reasons or for just the challenge of the program that we're putting in place around the hybrid and sort of synchronous learning and all of what's happening. So we had more retirements than we had anticipated, but it's really just a handful of folks that are taking a leave. And Darlene has been calling them to find out, because we're actually coming up on the 12 weeks, if you think about it. And they are, the vast majority are planning to come back at the conclusion of that time.
If you are teaching remotely from home, does the FMLA still provide the same benefit for the teachers, or is that a less of a factor?
So we don't have a program where someone can take an FMLA leave and teach from home. We permit it if they are quarantined or isolated and they're healthy enough to do it. But as a rule across the district, we do not permit people to opt to only remote teach. So that's only available, on an intermittent basis for those quarantine needs.
Are we using our substitutes for these kinds of cases, or have we actually hired more teachers to back up and fill in?
So we've done what we would typically do in the past, which is if it's somebody who's long-term, we've brought somebody in as a certified person in that content area to provide the instruction for the kids, because those teachers are out, right? They're not going to be teaching. They're not contributing to the class. When they transition in, then the period of that sort of substitute teaching comes to a conclusion, and they would transition out.
And they are still paid for that time, correct?
Yeah, under the FMLA they are, if they have sick days. So they can use sick days concurrently with the FMLA leave to be paid. Yep.
So if you offset the retirements with the leaves, which are limited, how much of a deficit are we in here, or vice versa?
No, we've come out a little bit ahead. We've saved a little more in retirements than we typically would have on balance. Now that's the difference there, is that's in the 2021 budget versus the coronavirus funds, trying to keep the accounting clean. But there was a few more retirements than we anticipated. So there's a little bit more savings there. Mm-hmm. Which means that when we do our budget process, it'll skew my averages. Not happy about that.
Yeah.
I might be a guest at that meeting, by the way, just for fun.
Yeah. And last question on this. In the FEMA money, is personnel included, or only resources and materials?
Yeah, so
I don't believe personnel is. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so if the personnel is used to directly take care of a COVID-related issue, we can apply for it. So for example, when we had our custodians come in to do a deep cleaning the weekend before we went out in March, we've applied for reimbursement for that.
But what about the additional subs or custodians or personnel or replacement teachers for teachers on leave?
Bill has asked us to put those in, and then what he does is he goes through a Q&A with the people at FEMA, and they basically tell him whether or not they're going to cover it. So it's not for a lack of trying. He's very good at giving us, requesting everything that we possibly could receive reimbursement on, as long as it's not being covered by the other 2 grants. And,
Right.
you know,
Right.
it's really
Yeah.
at their mercy as to whether they're going to approve it.
I just don't ever recall FEMA covering personnel, but that's why I asked if there was any, difference in their criteria this time.
Hey, thanks, Judy.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to move on to Tom. Did you have a question, Tom Schulte?
Yeah, so I was just trying to clarify here, just so I understood the context of the request. So just for example, Joanne, the technology at 508, those are expenditures or commitments for expenditures that are over and above the 600,000 lease for technology items that we approved in the budget, right?
That's correct.
And so I guess I'm just trying to understand that if for some, magical fantasy world reason, you didn't need to spend all of the 600,000 on what you already did, which were iPads or Chromes or whatever they were, then your request to come to us would, for the additional 508, would have been reduced by that fantasy amount that you wouldn't have had to spend, right? This is all over and above what you otherwise had available, correct?
Correct. So we maxed out on the 600,000.
Right.
And then anything beyond that. So all but the, I think it was 27,000 or 27.2, we were able to cover with the lease.
Got
So to get that 1-to-1 K8.
Right. And so I'm just wondering, because all of this stuff is, of course, coming to us as, here's the running list of expenses that we encountered in this unknowable world of the pandemic, and how we had to scramble to meet our, Labor Day, day one ramp up, and the first 5-6 weeks of running our hybrid as we transition to an everyday kind of program. And I'm just wondering, in all of that experience, were there any events or conditions which fell to the green side of the ledger rather than the red?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we
So
spent
did we do without something? Yeah, I mean, so from March 12th through, the end of the last fiscal year, we didn't have to operate our buildings like we normally do. And there was expenditures associated with both the operational program from an instructional perspective and a building maintenance operational perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of last fiscal year, you're going to see it. You don't probably know this right now, but it's $2.1 million that we underspent our budget by.
Right.
And that was because we had their planned expenditures that we incur regularly throughout the year. And had we been in session, we would have spent that money.
Right.
Similarly, in order to get in it, so that was pandemic related.
Right.
Similarly, when we're ramping up to deal with a pandemic in an environment that calls for full in school, hybrid or remote, it's cost us close to $2 million. And it's going to probably cost us maybe another 400,000 or 500,000 as we move through the rest of the year. So have we avoided costs? All of our costs in our budget basically are built to operate, and we are operating our buildings. It's just
Right.
costing a little bit more, or costing more, not a little bit, but it's costing more because we have to look at one-to-one individualized instruction, cleaning protocols that we haven't had in the past, and so forth. And this is a challenge, no question about it. And I think we've done it in a very thoughtful way.
Right.
But, as we go through the school year, just like last year, if something happens, we're out in remote, we're not going to spend money that we don't need to, and it will
Right.
come back to the town.
Right. I was just trying to put it into the right context, because because the manner in which you're executing on all this is so completely different than what you had anticipated when we had set the budget. If there was a background of, we're going to be spending materially less in this area or that area, so at the end of the day, while we might net be spending more, it's not going to be necessarily as much as the absolute amount of this special appropriation. Because when you kind of put it all together, and there might be some coming back to the general fund at the end of the year, I'm just trying to tease that out a little bit and understand it. And many of these factors will be unknowable, of course.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tough thing to do at this point in the year. It's just
Now,
there's too many unknowns.
So for some of these things though, like for example, the substitutes and the custodians, you were able to project the fact that you were going to need them all the way through the year. You knew what they were going to cost. But some of these other more consumables, it doesn't seem like you kind of took an annualized view.
That's
I don't know that it's possible to figure out how many sanitary wipes or whatever you're going to need. But in other words, some of these are, I think as Bob pointed out, well, this is what I needed through September 30. But then in terms of the substitutes and the custodians, it's like, well, I already committed for an entire year for that. And maybe you can walk us through your thinking on how some of those are, we already know what the annual number is, and some of these, it's just kind of, year to date through September 30.
Sure. So with regards to the guidelines from the DPH, and the assumption that we will be in school full-time for the school year, we have a fairly good handle on the cleaning, the manpower it takes to clean. We could be short on it. We didn't go overboard. We really went with what we thought we needed. What we're doing on the supply end, the consumable end, is we've put together a workbook for each school with a list of all the supplies we've disseminated to them for their protocols, and everything's very specific. We have to have MSDS sheets on everything. We have to have logs on everything for consumption, when they used, how much they used, and where they cleaned, and all of that. So we started with an inventory. At the end of September, we took an inventory. We took the difference in terms of how much they used, understanding that, of course, we probably used a little bit more in the beginning of the school year to get prepared. And so each month we're going to monitor, we should be pretty steady month to month after we get into this. And budget time, January, February, we should have a good sense of where we're going to be with consumables through the end of the year. Also with substitutes, we'll have a better handle on substitutes as to what's happening with our staff. And the heating, we're going to have to live with it. The heating is and the electric are very difficult to gauge right now. We have no idea what the weather's going to be like this year. If we have a really, really cold winter, it could be more than we're thinking right now.
Hey, Tom, we've got a few other members with their hands up. Can I move on? Are you good?
Sure. No,
Thank
no.
you. All righty. Chris Labrie?
Yes, so on following up on your last question, Dr. Keating, the cost of, in your anticipated expenses, you cite possible for additional substitutes. Having already hired 9, what are you thinking about as a potential need here going forward? Is 9 not enough, or do you think you need more?
Well, I could start, and then, Brian, of course, but our substitute account went from 5 years ago, right under south of $1 million down to below 700 now. And those substitutes mainly are for call outs on a daily basis. And so that's the account that we're more concerned about. We don't know what the health profile of our staff is going to be as we move forward. And so I just wanted to make people aware of the fact that, we've really brought that down over the years through some close management, but we can't control people's health. So I wanted the boards to be aware of that. If we can utilize and maximize the resources we have with the 9 permanent subs that we have, it may work to our advantage where we might not need as much as we have in the budget, but we just don't know at this time, and we wanted to make you aware of it.
Yeah, I think the important distinction, I'm sorry, Chris, the important distinction is we wouldn't be hiring more building substitutes. These would be for the periodic absences.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go just look across, 425 or so certified staff, 9 is, barely a percentage of what we really look at when we roll through our daily absences. So we do generally need to bring in more. This would work wonderfully if only one person was out each day at the building site, but there's more than that. So those the substitutes that we're talking about wouldn't be hired in, but would be on the day-to-day.
Okay, so earlier you said that you're having a problem finding substitutes, and that's why you decided to contract these 9 people so you'd have a permanent staff. what makes you think you'll be able to find substitutes if the situation becomes grave later in the year?
Yeah, well, last year we were able to find some. We don't have nearly as many as we used to, but we do have some. We have some folks who are certified teachers who didn't find jobs, who we interviewed for these building substitute jobs, and maybe they didn't get it for whatever reason, but they are still looking to do that kind of work. There's also a change in the statute that may allow us to use fourth-year teaching candidates who to do that kind of work for us. And there's also another piece around a generalist certification that we're exploring. So, it's certainly not business as usual, but we may have some other opportunities to be able to fill the gaps as we need to on a rolling basis.
So what was your substitute expense last year under normal circumstances?
I believe it was just south of 700.
Yeah, that's my memory too.
Yeah.
And again, 5-6 years ago, it was over 900.
Okay, so some of that expense will be covered by the contractual people, but some of that expense, the 700 will not, because they'll be on a case-by-case basis and you'll have to bring them in. Okay, and that's what you're giving us the heads up about.
That's right.
So that could be a number, several hundreds to thousands, but we don't know quite how much.
Hard to know. I mean, that's one of the few accounts in salary that we can't encumber year by year because it's, it's a moving target.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, thanks, Chris. Michael Chen?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Todd. By the way, Dr. Lutzy, first of all, congratulations on the great job you and your team have done in bringing the kids back to school so quickly and so smoothly. So congratulations. I don't have a kid in school this year, but I had a kid that graduated, as you know, last June, and transitioning him to online so quickly and the rest of it, the students, was an amazing job. So kudos to you and your team on that. And on this, Joanne, I think listening to you, all these expenses are needed, I believe. Clearly with the COVID, we need to do all this stuff for our kids, for our teachers, for all the employees. So I commend you on putting that together so quickly. The thing I don't know, just because I don't have the information on, is I can't assess whether 1.9 million is the right amount or not. And picking up on what Tom Schulte has said, I also would love to hear what offsets you have, so that maybe the gross amount is 1.9, but what is the offset? So maybe the incremental to your budget is not 1.9, but something less. Obviously we have responsibility as the BOF to the residents and taxpayers to do our homework, get the information, and do analysis. So what I would love to do is get the next level of detail, as we talked about. I would love to get the quantities you talked about and the price. For example, how many shields, how much you price it at, the masks, the gloves, the access points, how many of those, radios, Chromebooks. It would really be helpful for us to do our due diligence on that, to really have a better understanding of the level of detail of some of these items, so we can assess, how much they cost. And as you know, I have a lot of experience with PPE, and given the fact that you're saying you need more PPE, you could get a mask for $5 at your local hardware store, or you could, or you get it for like 80 cents if you find the right supplier. So I don't think I have all the information I need today, but I would love to get all the details on some of the stuff so we can do the right level of assessment on this 1.9 million.
So Michael, just so I understand, you're looking to understand sort of the price per desk shield, and did we order 300 or 400, and where each one went? And I mean, that's a pretty granular level of detail that we generally, that would certainly take some doing to put together.
I don't think I need to know where they went. I just need to know how many, and the pricing, I think, is.
I think, in order to know, if you know how many, I think it's important to know why, right? I mean, if we need 425 versus 325, but those are, that's a pretty granular level of detail. Like I said,
for example, at a high level, if you said, look, we need about 5 masks per student, there's 4,000 students, that's 20,000. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. And Brendan, I don't know why you're shaking your head, but feel free to comment on why you're shaking your head.
love to know.
I'd like to jump in and just, I guess my question on the level of granularity is it's not something we typically provided. We don't provide details on the number of desks or pencils that we purchase per student. And I think the thing we don't know is how many masks we will need per student this year or how much sanitizer. So I think these are costs that are expended to date on what our expectation is we will need for the short term.
Love to know with the 95,000, how many masks that is, just as a benchmark to understand the cost per mask. I don't think that's unreasonable for $2 million more money. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for the next level of granularity to do our job as Board of Finance members. Like I said, I think they're all legitimate expenses. I have no question on that. It just would be helpful for us to assess and analyze it from that point of view.
Hey, Michael, is the point, I guess what I'm hearing from you is that you feel like you have experience with PPE. Is it the fact that, perhaps going forward, you might, be able to help do this at a more cost-effective way? Because it sounds to me, what I'm getting the sense is these are pretty much expenditures. It's already done. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, in terms of the PPE you have in place. And is the question more kind of going forward? Most of these items, correct me if I'm wrong, are things you have spent the money on, except for obviously the contracted labor and stuff like that, which is going to be an ongoing expense. So is it more the question of perhaps going forward might be able to help?
Absolutely.
Cheaper, which is different than, if it's spent, it's spent.
I think it's two things, Amy, is to understand that we're being efficient and we're getting it at the right price. And the second thing is absolutely, I've offered the BOE 2 or 3 times to help with the procurement to see if we can be more efficient. So obviously it's a win-win. If we can save taxpayer money while still getting all the masks and the face shields and the access points at an optimum price, I think it's a win-win for all of us.
Yeah.
So can I jump in real quick? So you have a specialty that they should just leverage if they can. The rest of us probably don't need the per price for this stuff, but what would be helpful, and Tom was sort of headed that direction, if any of these line items sort of match up with a pre-existing an account within your 21 budget, that would be good to know, right? So in other words, presumably you had cleaning supplies, just general cleaning supplies that were in your regular budget. And if you think through this, this incremental cost is cleaning supplies that otherwise would be, you'd have your regular line item cleaning supplies to be used for that same cleaning. So, it might be just helpful if you could bucket some of these into what you think might be an otherwise a line item in the current budget that was already approved, and whether there's any maybe it's just going forward, but anything that we could otherwise look at it for efficiencies because you already had a budget for it. The last comment would be, so many of these things are one-offs, right? So acrylic sheets, bracket, I'm just reading the list. I mean, so much of this is sort of capital items that are unique to trying to deal with this event with COVID, that clearly there wouldn't be anything in your budget, but there might be on some of these other items. And as Tom said, even on the technology side.
That's right.
So if I may, one of the things that we've done consistently with every item that we have charged to the COVID account is we looked in our budget and said, if this was budgeted, it goes in the operating. If it's not, it goes into this fund, because we fully expect to be completely audited on this fund. So
maybe can I I'll help you, which is to say, this is really the incremental cost. Like you woke up, first thing you had an expenditure, you say, how can I fit this into my regular budget? If it doesn't fit into my regular budget, it's going on so the decision, this is a lot of thought process that's already come into this. Right. You're not just automatically saying, let's throw it into a special line item because we can. You're putting it in there because you have to, because there's no other place for it.
Right. It's our integrity that's on the line here. We're not going to do that.
No, that you have high integrity. It's just,
Michael,
we're just trying to help.
To know that under masks, face shields, gloves, and hand sanitizer, and I failed to delineate or to note this here, the hand sanitizing stations that are throughout our schools were probably 20% of this number, 25% of this number. because they're actual stands in hardware kind of, and there's, I don't know, 100 of them probably throughout the schools that cost $200 to $300. So I will update this list. And so the real number is kind of towards the 60 when you look at masks, face shields, gloves, and the sanitizing solution that goes into the units.
Is the capital, is the technology capital?
The technology, so for example, we had no plans in our lease for amplifying equipment. We didn't even know that we would need it in a pandemic, you know, for the access points without remote learning, our access points were adequate to support the school. With remote learning, they weren't. So we had to be.
I'm just asking, could it be treated as capital?
I mean, it could. I mean, in other years it might, you know?
Okay. All right.
The first two items.
Let's keep going down. That we have Neil and George, I think still might have some questions. And then I think I've got just a couple wrap-up questions. So,
So obviously this $1.9 million is because the educational construct changed so dramatically because of COVID-19. And so you incurred incremental costs because of that. But are there any incremental savings from the old structure, which we did not pursue because of COVID-19? So do you have any offsets? I think you mentioned earlier that you had underspent like $2.1 million?
In last year's budget.
Yep, in last year's budget we did, right. And so there, George, there may be, it's a little early to tell, but there certainly, you know, while we're doing this, we're also continuing our more traditional, if you want to call it that, you know, budgetary management.
Right.
And
so do you suspect or do you anticipate that there might be some offset savings from the old budget, or are you unwilling to go down that road until we're a little further along?
I would share that we're in such unpredictable times, right? That if we go to a place where we have to shut down again, then there will be savings. That's like there was before. We would anticipate at least. If we keep running just as we're running now, which is our hope, certainly, you know, we get everybody in, there may be more costs, you know, as we're looking at it. So it's tough to say, but I certainly think that our track record says if there are savings, we turn them back. You know, we've done that each year and, you know, done that in good faith right from the start. So we certainly would look to do that. And as, you know, as the year goes on, we're certainly glad to give updates. And, you know, we give once a month, the second board meeting of the month, we do our statement of accounts and we do a close, you know, reconciling of everything with the town. And we'll continue sending those on to the Board of Finance and Audit Committee and Town Council as well.
And to Michael's point, because I also feel an obligation to have a better handle on some of the costs, as legitimate as I'm sure they are. And thinking about it, 1.9 million, we take out, say, about 790,000 for incremental labor costs, which are very easy. So we don't really need to go down that road too much. We've already paid 425,000 or so on this 1.9. So we're looking at really asking for maybe some more texture and some more detail on about $700,000 of $650 of expenses. And I don't really think that that's too onerous an ask.
Okay.
So that's just my
opinion. Thanks for that, George. Neil, did you have a question? By the way, yeah, you're looking at just your number. I don't have my calculator with me, but at 700,000, well, at 2 million, it's $500 a student. So you're looking at about $220 a student at 700,000 to your points. Neil, have we asked all the questions? Okay, I thought Neil had a question.
I think he's muted.
Okay. Oh, Neil. You're muted, Neil.
I think I'm muted now. But before you called expenses one-time events, when you came in for the 600, and you felt pretty comfortable with that. Now here we are at a bigger number. Should we still be thinking that way? That this one-time events thing will form, let's say, a 50 or 60% ratio going forward, or do one-time events seem just ridiculous in this kind of environment? Or do you stick with what you said for the 600, which were one-time events?
You know, we work very hard to avoid the trap of saying mission accomplished and we've gotten it done and now we can just, you know, we're done. As we look at the list here, there are some one-time investments, if you want to call them that, the audio amplifiers, the access points, the digital learning software, like those, some of those big drivers are those one-time costs because we needed to get that equipment to run the program that we needed to run. The others are going to be more incremental based on sort of the modality that we're in as we're doing this. So I've worked hard in my communications with the community, with the staff and everybody to help them to get to understand that we're in a place that we just don't know what next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks are going to be. So we need to sort of make the most of what we have today and be prepared to adjust based on the context. So I would love to say that we're mission accomplished, but I'm not going to fall into that trap.
Was your question, Neil, are these one-time expenses or you're on mute again? I think these have to be considered one-time expenses for the most part. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, one-time expenses.
Okay.
But the last time it was pretty distinctive. It was very interesting that on the 600 that you stuck by that these are one-time events. And so I was wondering if you had moved on that number. So we couldn't look at this and just say the run rate is 40% fall away every year, for instance, and apply that way somehow to the total expenses. You know, it would be nice if you could say our run rate on is 40%, if there was a number like that. But I understand the insanity of the environment in terms of planning now. So I was really going for more for benchmarks that we could look at.
Okay,
I have one. Can I? Sorry. So this will maybe clarify something. When's the next time you have to come back, do you think? So because these certain supplies, we've only funded you through the end of, I know you bought stuff that will last into October and maybe November, but you know, what's the frequency by which you're going to have these extraordinary expenses such that you'll have to come back? Or should we figure out some other way to do it so you don't have to come back? Because this is, you know, we know sort of what the line items are and we figure out other ways that you can use your current budget so that, you know, we pick a date in the spring that you have to come back and then kind of clean everything up. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that what we can certainly commit to is having a pretty frequent communication back and forth around where we are and what's happening, so that we can, if we start to get to a place where we think it's the right time to come back, we do it. Right now, again, it's so many of these expenses it's the plexiglass, the technology, it's the big numbers. So when we get into our rhythm of having all of our kids in for a period of time and knowing what the mask sourcing is costing, knowing the cleaning and sanitizing those things, then I think we can better answer Neil's question too about sort of what's our rhythm, right?
That's why I asked the question, because it's kind of related.
I think we need a little more time.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? I want to move it along now. Let me have a couple maybe wrap up points and then last questions, and then I think we'll have a motion. First of all, I want to clarify we're approving 1.543 million tonight. Joanne, agree?
Yes.
Okay, it's not the 1.9 here, everyone. It's 1.543. I guess 091. Number one. Number two, this is a special appropriation, so everyone needs to understand there's going to be additional due diligence. This isn't just like your normal budget, as I said in my opening comments, where we don't micromanage the spend. When this comes in, we're going to have some due diligence questions. The first time we've had a special appropriation of $2 million, 2 months into the school year, in my memory. So there's going to be questions. Secondly, or thirdly, we will have some audit oversight for everyone's edification. So we will ask for that and have that. I think, as Dr. Keating said, it's not unusual, and we would expect that, and that'll be part of the discussion. The last thing, though, on Bob's point, I need to take a different point of view on that, and I'd like to propose this to the team. I think that many of these are one time. You're not going to come back here, I don't think, for digital learning software for $108,000. You know, I would suggest this. I think you should come either in November or December with what you project to be the things you're aware of. Masks, you have to throw them away, whether it could be hand sanitizers. There's going to be so much that you'll need. You'll have a pretty good sense of that. What we don't want, I don't want to have another 1.9, or in this case, $1.5 million spent first and then come ask for that money. We need to have a projection of some range in going forward. We understand it's not going to be perfect. We understand something is going to come up in January that we didn't think about. We're okay. I think everyone's okay with that. But I'd like to propose that for the things that we know will need to be spent and money will be spent on, whether it's drinking water again for the elementary schools or masks, whatever it may be, we'd like to see a budget projection for that for, let's call it for the next 3 months or whatever you feel comfortable, committing out to, so that we can have that discussion in advance of having to approve these funds. Okay.
Hey, Todd, I just have one question. Do we need to approve the 1.5 today? Or can we not, since they're going to spend the money, can we not get a little bit more due diligence and then approve all of it, including the projections, maybe next month?
Well, we have an agenda with an item on it to approve. We can approve, we can reject, we can defer. So we could postpone this. The money's been spent, and the students are taken care of, most importantly, right? The schools are being cleaned, the janitors have been hired. So there's no risk to deferring from that perspective. It's, however, I don't know that there's really any upside at this point, other than having the additional details, which I do think we should have, and obviously the audit oversight.
It's understanding the bigger picture before we make the approval. It might be 2 million, it might be 3 million, it might be $1.5 million, it might be less than that. I think having the bigger picture and a better understanding would make us make a better decision on the taxpayer money on what the right answer is. So.
Okay, well, we can put that to a vote.
Half of what we're approving are labor contracts that have already been signed.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
that's water under the bridge. That happened without our having a say on it. It was just done. So
It's all been done. The masks have been bought. The desk shields are bought. The carrying cases for the students are bought. The software's bought. It's gone.
Right.
So I think the only point, I think Michael makes a good point in the sense that there could be savings that could be offsets that could reduce this number. We didn't talk about, I don't think there's any travel. There's no teachers or faculty going to conferences and flying anywhere, obviously sports and all those sorts of things. So but I do think we're going to incur future expenses, right, everyone? So we need to see that whole picture before there's an approval versus this one. I think that's a great.
Todd, I do have just one question upon the busing. I mean, I know my son is getting driven in by us, so I'm just curious about, how is capacity on your buses? Has there been any change in that at all?
It's inching up as the year goes on. Some of the buses are still running very, very light. But some of them are getting closer to the capacity that they typically would run. So it started off light, they're inching up. As we bring more kids back into the buildings, the traffic is worse. The cars are waiting for a longer period of time. So I think parents are opting to put more kids on the buses. But it's not yet where it was back in February.
But that hasn't changed how many buses you're running, because you still have routes. It's just they're
it wouldn't, right? We still have to drive all the roads and cover all the same mileage every day. It's just the buses are a little lighter doing it, but we still have to go down all the roads.
Right, but it has no impact on your operating costs because that's basically baked in. You're going to run X number of buses over X number of routes, whether there's one kid in them or 20 kids in them.
Exactly. Yep. And actually, again, we picked up a little extra cost on the busing because of the half-day kindergarten that we put in place during the hybrid.
The one thing that I would really like, and I agree with Todd on this, is I would really like maybe next month's meeting, the offsets, the saves from having changed so fundamentally, at least for a portion of the year, the educational construct that we thought we were going to have when we did the budget last year. I would really like to see if there are savings there and how much that is. That would make us a lot more comfortable, I think, in looking at the increased costs that are associated with having changed the educational construct.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure. I think that there's also going to be some expenses that we didn't anticipate, like the heating fuel. Like that could be $250,000 that we don't have in our budget. And thanks to natural gas, it's only $250,000 versus twice that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be some other costs that are baked in. We may save some money with the additional retirements that we had, but we may be spending more in other ways. So it's going to be tricky. And I only mention that because I don't want to give a false sense of here's the savings when we don't yet know what those additional up costs are going to be.
Right. And
So
Brian,
we
that
are
was,
working, yeah.
that was not the direction of my request. It's just to get a better, clearer picture on what are all the moving parts looking like.
We understand that. I think that's, my request would be to come back in November. It could be 5 minutes, and maybe come back in December, but we need to see this proactively, not reactively, okay? We got to agree to that going forward, both on this, any potential savings and other costs. Obviously, the unknowns will present themselves.
Todd, if I may, we are going through the process of reforecasting our accounts for next year's budget. And so that'll be a part of it. And, you hit on one point that we've been talking about, conference and travel is going to be much reduced. Even though that budget's not a big number, it can offset. So I think going forward, it's a fair question. It's a fair part of the analysis, and
It should be zero. It should be zero. There are no conferences. There should be no travel. That's a no-brainer.
Well, there's some remote, but
remote's free. Understand that, but that's on you guys to come back and share that with us. Okay. Look, I'd like to make a.
Can I just say one thing?
Go ahead.
I think, this is, thanks for the information. Thanks and the detail. And I understand people looking for more information, but I just think we have to keep this in context too. These are extraordinary circumstances. People had to work incredibly hard to get this going, to keep everything open. And, expenditures have been made. And it was also, we have to remember, the money does come back to us not spent. They showed at the end of last year, I don't believe it was 1.9 or 2.1 million, whatever money was not spent from the school district came back. And unfortunately with COVID, there's more expense going forward. And the plus is that the savings of last year in many ways are offsetting these extraordinary expenses. So I think you guys have done an incredible job, and thanks.
Yeah. I agree, with you, Amy. I just think we should wait a month. We'll have better information in a month. We'll have better knowledge. The money's already spent. It's more of an approval to increase their budget by that amount. I don't see any downside in getting more information and waiting a month, and we have more knowledge and more experience and more responsibility to do this analysis to our taxpayers before we make a decision on this.
Right. Thanks for that, Michael, and I appreciate the need for the additional detail and information. I don't know that any of that will change this number because that money's been spent. The prospective cost hopefully can be offset by potential savings, and I think that's where we've got to make sure we have a sense. But the startup costs, these items, are what they are, and I think that's the proposal.
But I'm confused. Aren't we asking for approval of additional to the budget this year of 1.5 million? Maybe I'm not understanding the motion.
Yeah, the motion would be that the motion absolutely would be that to provide a special appropriation of the 1.543 million.
Yeah. So
this one for this one-time expense for, I'll call it this really as it stated, startup cost for COVID-19.
Right. So I'm proposing that we defer that for a month.
Okay. Well, we have to take this up as a motion, and we've got it on the agenda. We can vote yes, no, or abstain. And that's what we'd like to do first. And if it doesn't go forward, we'll have to come up with another motion. Okay. So we need a motion on the approval of the appropriation of the 1.543.
I so move.
Bob, is there a second?
Second.
Amy, discussion? Tom, would you second?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, do we have to approve a modification of what is in front of the board since it's as 1.9?
No, it's the range of 1.5 to 1.9. I specifically asked to put a range on the agenda so that we were covered.
I see. All right. So then the motion as made by Bob then stands, is what you're saying.
That's right. Of the 1.543 million. Okay. That's been motioned by Bob, seconded by Amy. All in favor of that proposal? Aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Michael abstains. Okay. All right. Okay. So the motion is passed. Now
I'm abstaining as well. I'm voting against it. I think that we should.
Okay.
I think we should, we're only 2 months into the school year. I think we need to take a look at the same numbers in another month or two and see where our offsets are, and hopefully we're still in school and this is a viable discussion. So I'm I'm abstaining or voting against it for.
Which is it, Judy? I need an official. Are you
Is that an
saying no or are
abstention?
you abstaining?
It does.
Todd, I think we need a roll call.
matters.
I only saw 4 hands that said yes. I didn't see more than 4 hands that said yes. We should do a
Right there.
roll call.
We'll just do a quick roll. Let's do a quick roll. George Blaufelt, yes or no?
Yes.
Neil Budnick, yes or no?
Yes.
Amy, yes or no?
Yes.
Michael Chen, yes, no, I should say, or abstain.
Abstain.
Abstain, thank you. Chris isn't seated. Judy, yes or no?
Abstain.
Abstain. Tom Schulte, yes or no?
Yes.
Bob Spangler, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, that's 5 yeses. And Todd LaViere is chairman. I will vote for yes.
So
Okay.
I'll and then just to summarize everything, actually, I don't think we're all that far apart, and so fine. I actually, Todd, you do the right idea is what people are referencing, which is fine. These are expenditures going forward. Let's see where this savings are. Let's see how we get this thing cleaned up. But I think people have to realize they're not going to just have expenditures on other items because they're on the budget. They're only going to expend them if they need to. But it's nice to know that we don't overcommit. So going forward, let's see where the savings are and do a net. If it comes back again, you'll do a net approval, because presumably I won't be here, but you'll do a net approval on what's needed, if anything, based on the savings that actually are going to be realized through the school year.
Yeah, that has to be the approach we'll take. And again, pre-approvals only. Dr. Keating and Dr. Lutzy and to the Board of Ed, we need to have pre-approvals, not post-approvals, and have a view of that. These are special appropriations. These are not in your budget. So we need to handle it that way. Okay, and Michael's comments, not only on the procurement of the PPE, very important. We need to know that that's being discussed and taken up from a savings point of view, and then incorporate the savings ideas. Okay.
Well, Todd, just one other quick thing, which is simply that the greater amount of information, the more detail isn't just a good idea. That has officially been asked for.
That's a requirement. I know. If that wasn't clear, thank you for that. That's right.
Because they're not the only. I'm just.
Yep.
We greatly appreciate they're the experts. Nobody's trying to second guess them, but they're not the only department in town facing extraordinary circumstances.
Right. That's right. And there's a level of due diligence that we have as a standard. We have to have. We just have to have those details. I know I'm sorry that it's cumbersome. It is what it is. Okay. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the next item. Number 6, the November election. Claudia, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. And now the agenda item says presentation and approval of funding needs. There is no amount on the agenda, so there actually can't be an approval of funding, although I'm not sure it really matters. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
no,
I think we'd rather just have the final amount after the election when you're done counting sometime in late February. Kidding. There's a little humor.
Yeah, no,
it was just a little humor. So
that's okay.
Okay.
That's fine.
So update. Yeah.
Yep. So you asked me to come back and give you an update, and I can report that as of today, we have issued just over 4,500 absentee ballots. 3,000 of which we had to have ready to go out the first day of issuance on October 2nd. 4,500 is twice the amount than we've ever had to issue before in any election. And out of that, only 1,766 have been executed and returned. I expect that we're going to issue probably another 3,500 or so before November 3rd. Still anticipating a total of about 8,000 ballots for this election. We've been fortunate to be able to take over the town meeting room for the absentee ballot operations, and it's been a godsend. We have the space for our workers to spread out and to be safe, and we can easily separate the operations of issuing the absentee ballots from the operations of managing the returns. And there was just simply no other place in Town Hall to accomplish this. And also the ballot drop box outside of Town Hall is working very well. And the majority of people requesting ballots and returning ballots are using this method of delivery. And we continue to reassure voters that voting by mail is safe and secure. And I mentioned before that we had to prepare for the worst. So I broke the expenses down, for your update, I broke the expenses down into 6 categories plus staffing. And the good news is that we're going to be able to use much of the newly purchased supplies and equipment in the future, like laptops, rolling carts, portable ballot lock boxes, etc. So the first category is just ballots, and that is 10,400, which represents.
Where is this, excuse me, where is this information?
I don't know if someone was able to load it on or not.
I believe Tom received it this evening.
It's coming up.
He
on our
received it very
screens.
late.
Thank you.
Yeah, we just
he
got it,
received
so
very
that's
late.
why you're just getting it now.
Okay, we can see that, Claudia. Thank you.
Okay, great. So the 10,400 represents 100% of absentee ballots and 100% of the poll ballots. So it's both. You know, we had to prepare for people to go either way, all to the polls or all by absentee. The second category is equipment at 8,900, and that includes laptops, printers, scanners, surge protectors, adapters, etc. The third category is postage at 6,020, and that would represent 8,600 stamps at 70 cents each. Again, we have to pay for mailing out the ballots when they come back. The state's prepaying for that. The fourth category is supplies at $2,400, and that includes rolling carts, secure rolling ballot containers, pens, tape, stamps, labels. We've needed a lot of labels for the printers for the ballots, clips, etc. The fifth category is printing at $525, and I think that may have saved us a bit of money because instead of having somebody manually stamping our return labels on our outer envelopes and printing inserts and cutting them out, we were able to send all this off to the printer and just get it done. The last category is miscellaneous, and it's $250 for the installation of the ballot drop box outside of Town Hall. So those expenses were $28,495. The other side to this equation, of course, is staffing. And so far, and I made a mistake here, sorry, staffing through October 4th is really $10,053. I had written 10,366, so my mistake, sorry. This was in a really short period of time. As I say, we had to really push to get those 3,000 ballots out by October 2nd, which we did. And now the guess is how much more manpower do we need going forward? We actually have been pretty busy every day. And so I'm anticipating anywhere between another $15,000 to $20,000 for part-time staff. I'm using 2 of my currently budgeted part-time people. I pulled them off of, daily work here, and we put them completely on absentee ballots. So some other town clerks have been using maybe a little less staff, but they've also had to reduce their office hours to the public. And so far we've been able to stay open, throughout the week. Things are by appointment only, and at the end of the day, the total estimated expenses are anywhere between $50,000 to $60,000, which is actually less than my previous estimates. So that's kind of the update.
And do you have any idea what it might cost if you have to work after November 3rd?
Well, what do you mean by that? You mean if we had to continue in counting or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, is the count, you're anticipating the counting being done on November 3rd, right?
Right. So at that point, on election day, we're still working, but by the day after, that's going to be on the registrar's side and the absentee ballot counter side. So we turn over what we've issued to the registrars and the absentee ballot moderator, who then directs that whole operation of counting. So we don't do any counting.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have an idea of what the registrar is thinking in terms of, is anybody from registrar's office on tonight?
No. Not that I'm aware. I think that they, as far as I know, they are preparing to run a full, election in all 3 districts. They've had a lot of people reaching out to them offering, help, but they also have a good team of experienced, election workers as well. I think people are getting absentee ballots. They're going to wait to the last minute to decide whether or not they're going to go to the polls. I'm getting a lot of feedback that way. So it's all a toss-up still. We have, 3 weeks to go. We'll see where that takes us. I think the majority of the extra funding that we need for the election is probably in the absentee ballot issuance side. I don't know that the registrars are going to have to increase their normal presidential staffing requirements. But that's all I know.
Any other questions for Claudia? I mean, at this point, we're just gonna have to see how it all plays out. I mean, we see an application for a ballot, but I'm gonna vote on election day, so I'm not gonna send it back. You've sent out a lot of applications, but who knows how many will come back in. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Judy, a question or?
Todd, one question.
Kevin?
Claudia, are there revenues from the state to offset this grant?
I understand that we have received a bit of money funding so far. I thought it was about $10,000, but I'm not sure. Maybe Linda might have some more information about that.
Yes, I spoke to Joanne earlier today, and you're right. It's about 10,000, but I'll double check and I'll send out the exact number that we received.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay. We'll look forward to an update in November.
Okay, thanks so much.
Claudia, yep. Okay, we're gonna have a quick update on the budget planning and discussion from Chris George and Michael to go through where we are. This will not take 30 minutes, but I'll turn it over, I guess, to you, Michael, or to George?
Yeah.
Chris?
I think we talked about, I can just give everybody a heads up real fast, and Mike and Chris can correct me when I make a mistake. But so this is an update for the budget working group. The ongoing COVID-19 challenges, as we talked about all evening today, really have to a degree competed for a share of mind with everybody, with everybody's thinking regarding the 2021-2022 budget. So that's made it a little more difficult to get traction on this. Nonetheless, we recognize that the calendar is the calendar. It's going to happen. And we've held preliminary working discussions with the town council's finance subcommittee, representatives from the Board of Ed, and with Kevin and Linda to start the ball rolling. The ongoing objective of these meetings is to build some common perspectives on the overall budget. And by doing so, to help streamline next year's first quarter budget reviews. So maybe they will be a little bit less onerous than they have been in the past. The intent is that we're going to deliver a document that will include not only specific guidance for fiscal year 2021's budget regarding debt levels, mill rate assessments, total spending levels for the town and for the Board of Ed, but also for the first time, we're going to try to include some top-level multi-year budget guidance. Our thinking is that by including maybe a rolling 3-year annual budget view in the Board of Finance's budget guidance document, we could provide some context and parameters to the town departments and to the Board of Ed as they develop their multi-year personnel, capital, and contractual programs and plans, so that they'll have a sense of what the parameters are and how much flex the Board of Finance at least is expecting those 3-year plans to have. And we're still committed. We will deliver the budget guidance document for good or for ill next month. So that's pretty much where we are right now. Is Chris or Michael, do you think that's pretty much where we are?
Yeah, that's the state of the game.
I think you said it head on, George. It's getting a 3-year plan to see where we'll be in 3 years, so that the spikes and the valleys are offset if you look at a 3-year plan versus just looking next year. the key is what is the base year? Because you got to go off the base year. And I think we all talked about maybe making the base year this year's budget is the base year, excluding any excess COVID expenses.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot to mention that, Michael, and especially because that was the point that you had really convinced everybody was the way to go.
So is the game plan for you guys to put together a prospective guidelines and distribute to the rest of us prior to the next meeting so we can chat about it then? Is that it's, so you guys are subcommittee, you're going to put forth guidelines for the rest of us to kind of chat about, right?
Right. What we did last year and the year before and the year before that is we tried to get it out to the full board at least a week before the meeting so that everybody would have a chance to take a look at it and, go through it and see what they thought and what they agreed to and what they disagreed to. And that's what we're planning to do this year as well.
Great.
Now, I think if you have any feedback to us before, it would be helpful. Like, what do you think the goal should be, right? Because we can't put a budget guideline without understanding what the goals are. Is it to put that infrastructure? Is it to keep the mill rate flat? Is it to be more efficient, to be more effective, to make our school systems even better? It's like, it would be helpful if there's any feedback from you, because we've gone to the town council and got that feedback. We're meeting with the Board of Ed. We're meeting with Kevin and Linda to kind of get the goals from all the different groups. So to our Board of Finance colleagues, any feedback on what you think the goals should be would help us set the guidance or the recommended guidance to the board next time.
Okay, what's your time frame for input? When would you look for that information? I know it's only a month, so it's a lot to get.
Now and next month, I would say.
Okay.
Sooner the better.
Michael and George, just one other piece of input. I had a preliminary conversation with Katrina and with Brian just on the Board of Ed's process this year. And as you heard, they're swamped. They just have a lot going on right now, have not spent a lot, if maybe not any time on next year's budget. So what we suggested was perhaps a sit down with them and talk about guidance together to get their input, provide our input, and before we issue guidance, and have to do that also between now and then.
Yeah,
a little working session.
Right, and given that there's such a big piece of whatever the total budget is going to be, yeah, we should do that as soon as they've got the time.
Yep, TBD. Okay. Other thoughts? Other comments?
Well, I guess one question. I don't know if I'm on mute, but how much pressure does it put the other departments under if our guidance is issued a week, 2 weeks, a month after November? Like, how much time are we looking at in terms of sitting down, scheduling a working session with BOE, folding that into our other thoughts, and then being prepared to issue something? People have a sense on that?
I'm not sure, Tom, that I understood.
Well, so if the goal is to formally issue the guidelines at the next meeting, everybody, and we take a vote, so it all looks good. If we were to push that off, in other words, what I just heard Todd say is, well, for the lion's share of this budget, right, around which our guidance is supposed, if that can't actually, kind of unfold in the way it has previously, but we have to sit down and do working groups. Can we do that working group maybe after the November meeting, or what sort of pressures are we in?
I think the thing to remember is this is a budget guidance document, right?
Yeah.
And as Todd said, if we can connect with the Board of Ed while we're putting that document together, then there really ought not to be a great need to defer issuing the guidance post the November meeting. And certainly for the town, we've always with Linda been able to work very closely with Linda and Kevin so that we're pretty much on the same page when we issue the budget guidance document. So I think we'd be okay. And at the end, if we do the guidance and somebody comes back and says, well, you guys missed the entire boat here and you're totally wrong, we can always go back and amend it.
Now, your meeting is November 10th. And Linda, what will be the date that the department heads are supposed to have their preliminary
Right, so there are a couple of dates that are in our charter. The Board of Selectmen, you need to have your, no later than the 13th, about January 15th or so is when the Board of Selectmen needs to have their budget. But usually, in order to get to that January 15th timeline, departments have guidance. They spend some time working on it together. We individually meet with departments. So, on the department side, it takes at least 5 to 6 weeks to start from the guidance to actually get the budgets together, to meet and have those discussions. So I think going past November into, let's say, the December meeting puts the departments in a really tough timeline to deliver the budgets with the appropriate due diligences and the review of the first selectman in order to have the Board of Selectmen review it. And so I think last 2 years we had the guidance in October. Last year we had it in November, which was later than usual. It did pose a crunch, and I think this year going past November makes the guidance not very helpful to departments because they can't do anything until then. Or if they start working on it and then the guidance comes out and they miss the target, then they have to go back and work on it.
Understood.
Other questions, other input? I think we're just going to have to work with the schedule that we've got. I think the big picture guidance, things like, will we be increasing the amount we're asking taxpayers to pay? What will the mill rate be? Those kinds of things will be the basis of the analysis that'll drive the variables around growth or expenses and so forth. So, we have to make reasonable assumptions on revenues. Revenues, we've got no parking lot revenue at the moment. So there's things like that we'll just have to be working on.
Yep.
And make some assumptions.
Some scenarios. We should. It would be helpful. The sooner the better that we get the arching guidelines set. So, are we targeting the mill rate? Are we targeting amount of money to be raised from taxation? Are we targeting some other metric? What is it? Because we need to have that to start the process. We can have conversations with the people who have to give us the input, the Board of Ed and the town departments. But if we don't know what the metric is that this board wants to work around, then we can't be very precise. So ideally, we would have discussed it tonight and said, okay, here's what the most important overarching goal is X. And then our committee would have its marching orders, and we would go out and, with that in mind, start having these interviews and these working sessions.
Yeah, I think there's nothing that holds us back from having the working session with the Selectman's office in the Board of Ed over the next couple of weeks to get some of that input and then some of that guidance. We've got to run the scenarios in terms of what it will mean, right? We can't have every department increase 3% and expect to have flat taxes. It's a non-starter. We just don't have that much money to spend. So.
Yeah, but what if the goal turns out to be, well, that's, the tax rate's not the issue this year. This year, it's, the best schools in Connecticut. I mean, we don't, what is it? Makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good point. Managing debt is a good example on that. How serious are we? Want to watch our debt?
Right.
To what extent is that a priority, or is the mill rate, or best schools, or whatever? But it's hard not to know that going in terms of what you're going.
But maybe a suggestion then, since if those are the things that are blocking progress, put together some scenarios on what if we only issued as much debt as we paid down? What if mill rate was flat? What if we kept taxpayer expenses flat? What if expenses were up 3% here, 2%? We can create some scenarios that would be, to Amy's point, great fruit for having the discussion in November and pick a path. I don't think it's that hard on the departments to work from there going forward between then and January.
Yeah. That was what, and Chris did most of the work on it. We did, I think, 2 years ago, is we said, okay, suppose we decide we want no more than 1% increase in expenses.
That's right.
Well, what does that imply for everything else in the budget? And we made it very interactive.
It was a good model. That was the right model.
Yep.
If everyone's okay, we'll just I think that, why reinvent the wheel? Let's just use that as the starting point.
We had built that model with the input for the revaluation because we didn't know what the revaluation was going to be. So we had various drivers, and one of them was the revaluation. But Linda, you know how that model works because you and I worked very closely putting it together.
Yeah.
So maybe what we need to do is develop a variant of that. We don't obviously need grand list values because we can get some input from the town people as to what they think that might be, giving sales that have gone on and that sort of thing.
We can build it. We can build it with 3 variables: debt issuance,
mill rate,
flat mill rate. Mill rate and amount to be raised by taxation.
Yeah, and then everything else we can work on those assumptions.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
So if you'll get that out to our committee, the 3 of us, then we can start working on that. Linda.
Okay. Thank you, guys. We'll move on to Linda. Linda, financial award, financial update, tax funded capital. You've got our attention.
Sure. A couple of things. The first one is the recognition by the Government Finance Officers Association for the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And so we received word, I believe it was a week or so ago, that the town was recognized for that. And basically, what that is, in government finance, is the highest recognition that a governmental entity can get for accounting and financial reporting. So one of the things that we strive for is obviously through the course of the audit is to make sure that we have a clean audit, we have checks and balances, we have internal controls in place, and that we manage funds as stewards of funds in an appropriate manner. The other piece to that is reporting on how our funds are spent, how our revenues come in. And therefore, the government finance officers has a set of standards that entities who wish to achieve that level of excellence in financial reporting need to meet. You could put together a document that meets a set of criteria. That document is reviewed by peers. And then after review of those peers, you're notified whether you've met that level of excellence or not. The town of New Canaan first began doing this in fiscal year 16. So this is only the 4th year that we've achieved this award, and therefore it's exciting to receive this, and it's a really good award. The scope is that it's called comprehensive because the financials have to include all the funds components of the entity. So we report not only on the funds that we approve through the budget, but we also have these other funds that we get that you don't go through the budget process. Donations and all of those. So everything that is within the town's fiscal stewardship is reported, and that's what's a comprehensive report. And therefore, when you do that in a way that satisfies those requirements, you receive that award. The other element of the CAFR is that the financials have to be audited, and they also need to have the audit opinion, independent audit opinion included in this. So in putting together this document, we do work with our auditors. They verify that the numbers that are stated in there are in fact accurate and are a true presentation of our finances. And therefore, we go through the process of the audit at the same time as putting together this document. And therefore, when the audit committee and then the town council eventually receives the year-end audit, it is also this comprehensive report all done at the same time, and that is one of the requirements. And so the auditors look at, did we meet the government standards for reporting and so forth. And therefore, that's the award that we receive. Each year, when you put together this award, with the award, you receive a series of comments on how you can improve, things you can enhance. And as part of the submission, you have to respond to those comments from the reviewers from the prior year. And therefore, if they say you should do this, suggest you do this. So we have to go through that process as well. So the application is not only submission of the document, but also response to those best practices that they recommended. And therefore, one of the things that they look at in the subsequent year is, did they follow through our recommendations of best practices? And if so, then you receive this award. So this is for the fiscal year FY19 that ended last June that we're being awarded for. And as we're going through the audit now, we're actually working on this year's document as well. We anticipate submitting it for the award. But again, this is it's an exciting award. A lot of work goes in through our controller's office. So our own controller, Joanne Noon, spends a lot of time working on this document with the auditors, together with other finance staff. And this particular CAFR was submitted when Sandy was the CFO. So Sandy takes credit. I was the budget director when this was submitted. And so as the CFO, she deserves the credit for having overseen this effort through completion. So that's just that for your presentation, but it's exciting. 4th year in a row, and we'll continue reporting in this fashion and to receive these quality awards. Be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Well, congratulations again to you and the whole finance team and all the work that's been done. As you said, building over the last several years, and not a one-hit wonder, a lot of good work. Any questions for Linda on the award? Okay, we'll move on.
Sure, the next is the financial update, and I'm going to share my screen here. Share my screen. Maybe not. Tom, do you have that document? For some reason, it's not allowing me to share here.
I don't believe I do.
Okay, let's see.
It'd be on the, you'll try to get it from the tablets. Should be on the tablets, isn't it?
It is on the tablet.
It's on our
It is on the tablet. So maybe let me just walk you through. The first quarter, again, doesn't have too much activity, a whole lot of variances. But as I mentioned earlier, last month, I talked about our tax collections for the year. Our tax collections are doing well. We are on target to where we were projecting, and therefore I don't anticipate any cash flow issues. The other thing that sticks out is our building permits revenue. Year to date, we're at 183,000 compared to 127,000 the year before, and therefore I think that's a good trend. We're doing better than we were doing last year, and we did revise our building permit numbers below this year. We've talked about our conveyance fees. I believe last month I reported $500,000 in conveyance fees. A month later, we are at 781,000 in conveyance fees. That is compared to 300,000 the year before. Our budget for conveyance fees was $1 million, and therefore 3 months into the year, we're already at 78% of budget just in conveyance fees. And so I think this is really going to bode well for the town. The flip side of that is our parking and permit fees. As you recall, we suspended parking fees, and therefore those fees typically come in the months of June, July, and August, with July and August accounting for about 75% of that revenue. Now, obviously, we have not received any significant July and August revenues. And therefore, this year, we're only at 22,000 in parking fee permits combined. whereas last year we were at 291, and a big 291,000. So a big chunk of that is that that summer parking revenues that we get, because that's when those are due. But then all in all, our total revenues, if you add everything up, we're at 52% of total revenues. I don't anticipate any issues. As I mentioned, I think the conveyance fees and the building permits are going to offset the parking deficit that's been throughout the year, and therefore I don't see any concerns on the revenues. On the expenditure side, everything is trending well. Total expenditures year to date were just under 20%, 3 months into the year, and those are trending just as we anticipated. So as far as budgets, I'm not too concerned where we are right now. FY20 year end, we're wrapping up the audit. I shared with you last month where we anticipated we would be. Right now, our revenues will exceed our expenditures for fiscal year 20, and therefore we do anticipate a modest increase in the fund balance this year, which will help offset the request that you just approved, the special appropriation for the Board of Ed, because of the savings from last year's budget from them and other departments. That gives us the ability to make that special appropriation this year without adversely impact our financial position.
Linda, what's the range of that additional revenues above expenses?
Here, let me pull that right up.
You can't just toss that out casually and not expect that we're going to ask that. You know.
Oh, here we go. The swing is about $1 million going added to the fund balance.
Okay. That's pretty significant. That's good news. Thank you.
Sure.
And you said you weren't too concerned about revenues, but aren't you, when you expect our parking revenues are going to be down $1 million? I mean, it's going to be a pretty big hit.
It is, but I think it is going to be offset by I think our conveyance fees are going to be higher. And then, we budget at 98.5 collection rate in taxes. We're already doing well there. Our back tax collections are also exceeding what we had budgeted, and therefore I think net will be fine.
Okay.
I mean, we'll still lose that amount of revenues, but I don't think that our revenues are going to be that adversely impacted because of that one revenue line.
Okay, fair enough. Any questions for Linda on the update? Okay, let's move on to the tax-funded projects.
Okay. On this one, I'd like to ask that you take up number 11, because on this, there's a series of transfers that are dependent on the actions that you do with number 11. So if you could swap 11 and 10, and then I'll come back to the tax-funded capital projects.
Okay, fair enough.
And I believe Tiger is on to speak on, or Bill, on number 11.
Tiger, over to you on the transfer station.
Sure. What we were looking at originally for work at the transfer station for our staff, currently our staff is using the old transfer station, or the old incinerator building, excuse me, as a lunchroom and an area to use the restroom. So we were looking at renovating that area to kind of, well, basically bring it up to standard. It's a pretty derelict area for them to be utilizing. So we were looking at trying to refurbish that space. And when we got further into it, the building itself has quite a bit of issues, notwithstanding a lot of environmental concerns as far as environmental mitigation, given the fact that it was previous incinerator building. So the further that we got into it, we felt that we were going to be spending good money after bad. We also have an issue with the current scale house is just a very small structure. Basically houses one individual, possibly two at times. My superintendent, actually his office space is down at the wastewater plant, which is at the bottom of the hill. He's never been up at the scale house, up at the transfer station. So in order to go and work with his staff or actually supervise the staff, he's got to walk up the hill or drive up the hill, spend time there. And then in order to do his work, he's got to go back down the hill to do his work. So our overall thought was to kind of suspend the work on, or the thought of doing any work at the incinerator building, the previous incinerator building, and look to bring in a new structure at the scale house, basically expand that structure. Well, in essence, remove that scale house and put in a better structure that would house everyone, house my superintendent, give him an office, get a better scale house operators area, give them their break room, a restroom for them, their lockers that are necessary, and then a restroom for people that utilize the station, since right now we don't have one for them, and they're forced to either go back home or utilize the area that our current staff are using. So we went forward, took a look at the possibilities, and came up with basically a prefab structure that we can remove the existing scale house, place this new one in, and basically satisfy all of our concerns and all of our requests and needs in one fell swoop. We've had instances in the past where there's been disagreements at the station as far as poundages and service and things of that nature. And since I don't have a supervisor on site, or he's not there, I don't have a witness to any of the issues that go forward. It makes it quite difficult at times to basically provide the service that we want to provide to the public. So we feel that this would be a necessary, I guess, adjunct or a necessary change. We had originally had these plans when the transfer station was originally built, and they were redlined on the original plans back during its inception. So at that time, we didn't even have a scale house per se. We only had a trailer that was utilized by the construction staff at the time of the construction of the transfer station and the capping and the landfill. We took that over with that for a number of years until it basically fell apart below the feet of our employees. We brought in the scale house a number of years ago, this prefab structure, and while it's served us well, it's seen its useful life, and we would like to actually bring ourselves into compliance and bring ourselves into the point where I've got all my staff in one location and my supervisor can actually supervise the ongoing work at the transfer station while on site. So I asked Bill to put together a way to try to see if we can't do it with monies left over from previous projects, anything that we hadn't utilized or didn't need to utilize, so that we wouldn't have to come back for any additional money. We would just ask for monies that were unexpended. And he put together the list that was submitted to you. And in essence, we'd be looking at the project total would be $173,810. We added a contingency of $20,190 for a total of $194,000. We had $50,000 in the original budget, and we've detailed out $144,000 or so in transfers. So we're asking for those transfers to be made and for one larger project of $194,000 to be created, so that we can actually place this structure, remove the existing scale house, possibly reuse it for another purpose, and then put this new structure in place. And I can get all my staff in one location and properly supervised and better service the public from that location.
Thanks for that, Tiger. Questions? Any questions from the board? Go ahead.
I would be really surprised, Tiger, if you can find a use for that existing building, because it has seen a lot better days than what its shape's in now.
I agree. I was trying to see if I could use it for the dog, but it's a little bit small for that, but we were thinking of something that we might be able to reutilize it for, but we hate to waste anything. But so I was thinking about the, as a dog pound, so to speak, but it's probably a little bit too small, but we'll look for something. If we can't, then we'll either sell it or trash it.
Someone else have a question? Judy, did you have a question? You're on mute. Yeah. You're on mute. You're on mute, Judy.
I'll move. It's long overdue.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before?
No, it's long overdue.
Judy's hand is up. Going once. Michael?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think Tiger always tries to find a way to save a dollar wherever he can, and he uses the best. My experience, he is efficient use of our money. So my faith is Tiger is optimizing our taxpayer money with this project as well.
Is that a second?
Yes, that's a second.
Okay, so Judy, motion, Michael, a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so moved. Thanks for that, Tiger.
Thank you.
All right, back to 10. You want to go back to 10 and get the other one?
Sure. I don't know if you have any questions on each individual item. That we're asking, basically, the majority of them are in play. Most of them have encumbrances associated with them. And if not, they're soon to be brought forward into a viable project. So we're asking for them to be carried over. I think there was one or two that were asked to be closed, but they had small balances that we felt we could do without.
Am I right in saying that this is about a third the length of the previous years? This feels like a very short list.
It is. Yeah. I think we're doing a nice job of trying to clear out some of the long-standing projects and move them forward.
Good.
One of our goals is to try to clean out everything and then be current with each project.
Any questions from the board on any of the projects?
Is everybody able to see that document?
I have it on my tablet, Chris.
Mine doesn't open on the tablet. Okay, as long as everybody else sees it, that's fine.
So just, hold on.
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, we're looking at the tax supported projects list, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I have a question in terms of
And
the.
therefore, on the tax supported project list, the projects are in 3 categories.
Yeah.
The first category are projects that are completed and are ready to be closed, and I just need your approval to close them. And included in those are the projects that Tiger has identified to be transferred to this new project that we're creating. And so we're going to transfer the funds into the new project and then close these projects out because we're zeroing them out.
Yeah, Amy, Amy had a question about a particular item, I think.
Yeah, no, yeah, I was just going forward to the carryover projects. That was where my question was. Just.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, because, the largest one, if I saw this correctly, it was at the Locust Valley lot, right? Is that the biggest one that we haven't really?
That's, yes.
Right. So maybe if we could take the buckets one at a time, and then we can move on to the second.
Sure.
So in the first project, I just need your approval to close out the projects, including the projects that Tiger just requested for transfers. And once those transfers are done, those are to be approved. And therefore, if I could get a motion and a vote to do that, then we can move on to the next set of projects.
So moved.
Second.
Amy, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Speak up. Don't just raise your hand if you're opposed. Okay. Okay. So moved.
All right, cool. The second bucket of projects is, as you know, our town charter allows for projects that are authorized. We have 2 years to get them done. And therefore, all of these projects have just completed year 1, and they have another year to get done by charter from their original inception. And therefore, what we're bringing these to you is to just approve that rollover. This is standard. They're in their first year of 2. And therefore, we just bring those to you just so you could see where they are and also your approval for them to roll over into their second year. And this is not a special appropriation. It's just the request for them to continue as the town charter is written.
Any questions on that list?
Right. So this is not like in the past where something's been beyond 2 years and we have a special thing to roll over. This is just, we're in year 2, typical.
This is year 2, yeah. The third bucket is what you're referring to.
Right.
Yeah, so these are just year 2 projects, and we just need approval for them to proceed.
Mhm.
Motion or any questions? No, none? Input? Okay, a motion.
So moved.
George, second. Anyone?
A second.
Amy, thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Please speak up. Nay, okay, none? Motion approved.
So the final list is that list that you're referring to, Amy. So these are projects that they've had their 2 years, 2 years are up, but the departments are requesting that these projects roll over again and begin the clock for another 2 years so that they could be completed. And I've sorted them by department, and so you can see, and I believe Tiger is on and the fire chief is on if you have any specific projects for them. I think the Board of Ed has dropped off the call, but that's what these projects are. So these have had their 2 years and they're asking for more time for them to get completed. And in order for this to happen, it does require a special appropriation for them to move forward, but the funds have already been approved and they have the funds in the accounts, but just need the appropriation to proceed.
Well, I'm sorry. I guess I have a question for the police department. Bulletproof vests, mobile radio replacements, taser replacements, mobile data terminal replacements. None of that money has been spent. I would think that those are easy, that you just go buy them. So I must not understand.
Now, those are the 2-year side. You're talking about the ones we just approved, right?
Those, we just moved those, George. Those are, they had 2 years to spend it. And they've
They
only
have 2 years to
only
get
been 1
those
year,
done.
so they might still spend it.
Yeah, it's the next bucket. And Amy hit the right one. So there's a 2012 and a 2013 in there. And the Locust Avenue lot architect, is 2013.
Yeah.
It does feel a little stale.
But hang on, George, are you clear, George? I want to make sure George is clear.
No, I guess I'm still confused.
Okay, so that's what I thought. So the prior page, those were up, they had 2 years to
He's talking about
spend.
this page. He's talking about this page on the top.
Yeah. Projects rolling over as per town
I
charter.
agree with his question.
Yeah, those are the intra projects. They're within the 2-year cycle.
Right.
So that's just procedural because they're done with the first year. They're moving to the second year. They're really, there's no delay there necessarily, other than maybe just getting out the doing the RFP or whatever they have to do to procure those items, but they're within the budget cycle, if you will.
They had been approved. They don't expire yet, George. It was just they're in their second year. They have,
Yeah, I was just wondering why the delay, but the point that, these things probably have to have some kind of RFP or they got to go for competitive bids.
That's it.
That could cause the delay. So that
Well, and
okay
there's
now.
specialty items and whatever.
Yeah.
But the other one,
Bob, you really can't leave the board, Bob. I'm sorry.
Yeah, wait a minute. I'm still confused. I'm a little slow here, but these are on projects requesting special appropriations.
you hit the nail on the head. Amy, you hit the nail.
Wait. No, but wait, hold on. George was talking about the first one were police.
No. Amy, go back a page. There's 3 pages.
So this is why meetings shouldn't last past 9:45, by the way, if you want to know.
Zoom is just a disaster here for these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I see that. I got that.
Okay, so that second page is we've moved. It wasn't an issue. Third page happens to be, you're right, the first item is please. But that is, this is for open for discussion and zeroing in on the absolute right one, which is $124,000. Why would we approve that? I think that was your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Is Tiger still on the call?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Okay. So maybe talk about that 2013 Locust Avenue project.
Locust has gone through various iterations and it's still continuing right now. We are trying to finalize a plan whereby we'll be, in essence, just doing the resurfacing of the lot. will there be some engineering and architectural? There could be. That's why I asked for it to be carried over one more go. We wanted to get this work done this year, and due to the workload that we had and the other things that came up and the other priorities that we had to put Locust aside. Our goal is to have this done over the winter and then go out for a bid for an April build. So hopefully this is the last time you'll see this item. I don't envision that we'll utilize it all, but I would like to have some of the monies available in case I need some architecture.
Tiger, this is a rebuild of a lot.
That's correct. It's not a decking, you know, it's a rebuilding of a lot. But if I need something, I'd like to have a little bit of monies available.
And the project's going to be about $600,000-$700,000, which is coming out of the parking reserve.
We have money as well. We have budgeted monies as well for it. Some is coming out of the parking reserve, some is coming out of a capital expenditure.
But isn't that a big number for architecture, for a research?
It was originally planned.
No, it was for more. It was for building, but we're not doing that now. So do we need to appropriate? I know you need some money, but do you need 124,000?
No, you could take off, you know, basically leave me the encumbrance of 33,283, take the 91.
Okay.
Linda, you got that number? We'll have to approve that.
Tiger, what was that number? Not the 124?
Not the, right, the encumbrance of 33,283.08.
Okay, so that's
The fiscal 20 encumbrance.
33.
283.08.
283.08. Okay.
So hold that for, I'd like to move these at once if we can. Do you want to go back and look at any of the other ones? Any other questions from the board on any other items? Let's just take it one at a time. I guess I don't know if the fire's on, chief is on. Are these items still required, still needed? 2012 regional mobile data for 15,000.
Yeah,
The mobile data stuff from 2012, we're working on building a regional communications system for Westport, Fairfield, and New Canaan. And there have been some holdbacks, and they moved the location of where the building's going to, or the office is going to be. And it just keeps getting delayed. When you have a lot of partners in a project, they just get delayed. We still need the money.
Okay.
We know what we want to spend it on, but there's just been delays because of multiple issues.
Everything else here, Jack, you need as well?
Yes,
Assume?
water
Okay.
supply improvement. We're in the process of doing some of the work, and other work is still being planned. And we'll be able to spend all this money, I believe, in the next 2 years, just depending on partners and getting permission to do some construction when it comes to dry hydrants. That's the hard part, is getting property owners permission to actually install a hydrant on their property. And that takes a long time. That negotiation sometimes takes over a year.
That's correct.
Are there any others here that you don't need all this?
I've turned in most of the money that we had some unfinished projects, and we turned a lot of money back, but these projects are all.
No, you're good. I don't have any other questions, Jack. I'm sorry, that was for Tiger. Anybody have any more questions for Jack on the fire items? Okay, in terms of Tiger, your list, we took the locust down. Is there anything else here that at this point is overstated or overneath you can cut back?
The only one might be the bridge to the wastewater treatment facility to 2018. The available monies, I believe you could take. The 33,202, I just want to leave the encumbrances there.
Which project is that, Tiger?
There's two, Linda. There's the 2017 bridge, both bridge to the wastewater plants, the project 10136 and 10185. 10136 has nothing available. That one would stay. 10185 would be, they can take back to 33,202.50. Leave me the 16,758.32.
Everything else as is here?
Can I ask a couple questions? Sorry. So like the Nature Center pond dredging,
right?
10 grand. And then these are, you know, they add up, like the Waveney vegetation removal, 34,000.
Well, the pond dredging is already encumbered. There's a engineer or landscape architect working on that project. That's already been encumbered.
Okay.
$10,000. So there's nothing available in that project. The 34,000 for the vegetation removal, I think that's been expended. I have to look back and see. I think that money, that shouldn't have a 34,100 balance available. That money.
No, those balances were at the end of the year. So you're right. If those encumbrances roll over this year, that's why we're asking them to roll over.
Right.
Because we've rolled over the encumbrances.
And how about like the playground, the 30 grand for the playground safety upgrade?
That's been accounted for.
All right, this is a little stale then, this sheet.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Well, it's effective as of July 1.
Yeah. No, I mean, for now, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, so the things that, the ones that we said could go are pretty much it, basically looking at it. I just wanted to keep the encumbrances since those are planned expenditures to someone.
Okay. Any other items there? Okay, so anybody here from the Board of Ed? Have you spoken with them, Linda?
I did, and Joanne reviewed this list. I don't have a problem with it. These are projects that are ongoing, and some of it is just timing. Some of it are seasonal. With COVID, there are a lot of things that they couldn't get done, and therefore these are the lists that they've asked to roll over. They did have a series of projects that we did close at the last meeting, and therefore I think these are fine.
So we have a couple of items that have been updated. Linda, you have those worked out with Tiger, so we could have a motion to move on all the rest of them. We'll move this as is with those two changes. I'm okay with that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Any
you would
questions?
motion as amended pursuant to Linda and Tiger's notations on the encumbered or unencumbered funds being released.
Perfect. Okay.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Amy? All in favor? Say aye. Opposed? No.
Aye.
Please say no if you oppose. Okay. So moved. Thanks, Tiger.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, Linda, you've got some line item transfers?
Sure. The approval is the one that you already did, is the Tiger, the project that Tiger was referencing.
Okay.
So that's the approval, and you've already motioned that one. And then I do have 3 transfers just for your review. These are already done. They don't require your approval. 6,500 in the town buildings, 820 in health, and then 3,700 in projects between the town hall annex and the Waveney Lodge. And those are just for your review.
Any questions on those for Linda? Okay. Any other items, Linda?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I would thank everyone. I don't think there's any other business. So with that, we can have a motion to close. Motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Okay, Tom, second. Neil, I see you twisting there. It looked like you're looking to second that motion. No, you can't be on mute with a second. I don't think that's going to pass the Robert's rules.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it, whatever it is.
All right, thank you. All right, motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, thanks, everyone. We'll
All right.
see you next month. Thank you.
Next month.
Thank you.